Chapter 199. Zhangzhou Xianqing. Outside the 100 Shanghai city wall, endless corpses attacked the defensive formation outside the city as if going crazy. Zhangzhou Xianqing's defense formation ranks as high as rank 5. Even if true monarch Yuan Ying came, he could stop him for a moment. In the face of the attack of these corpses, it is naturally no problem. But although the defensive formation is strong, it cannot keep defending all the time. After all, it consumes the spiritual energy of Zhangzhou Xianqing's spiritual veins. So many zombies besieged Xianqing from all directions, and it continued, even if the spiritual veins of Zhangzhou Xianqing were as high as the 4th rank, they could not hold on. There was only one final result: Zhangzhou Xianqing was broken. Qin Daoxian was placed in the 43rd Defense Zone by the Zhangzhou Allied Forces. This defense zone is located in the southern section of Zhangzhou Xianqing. The chief officer of the defense zone is someone else. It is Qin Daoxian's old acquaintance Yang Linyuan, the head of the Yang family. Qin Daoxian is Yang Linyuan's deputy. Faced with this arrangement, Qin Daoxian naturally wouldn't say much. Although he believes that his strength is far superior to Yang Linyuan, Zhou Mingho's judgment of his strength is still at the level of 4 years ago, which is comparable to the cultivator of the Zifu. Leading a large defense area alone, if the defense area is broken, the people in the entire Zhangzhou Xianqing will suffer. Zhou Mingho naturally did not dare to take risks. Let Yang Linyuan, a cultivator on the 2nd floor of the Purple Mansion, sit in command plus 2 deputies. In this way the 43 defense zone will be foolproof. Deputy Commander Chen. Deputy Commander Chen. After some inspections, the soldiers on the city wall all bowed to him and saluted. Qin Daoxian returned the salute one by one and nodded to the soldiers. In addition to the defensive formation, the corpse group was still attacking frantically, causing ripples in the light curtain of the defensive formation. Everyone knows that when the defensive formation is put away, it will be the moment of battle between the two sides. As this moment draws near, everyone's breathing became heavy involuntarily. There is no way. The black pressure in front of the corpse tide that can't see the end. The pressure on the cultivators is too great. Even Qin Daoxian felt his scalp tingle when he saw the endless tide of corpses like a black ocean in front of him. Corpse tide. So horrible. This is not something that a mere Zifu or even a Jindan cultivator can solve. I'm afraid even if Yuan Ying Jinjuan saw this scene, he would feel powerless to sigh, right? Qin Daoxian thought to himself. Master Commander. After inspecting the defense area, Qin Daoxian came to the temporary command post in the 43 defense area and bowed to Yang Linyuan. The subordinates have inspected all the defenses in the defense area, and the soldiers are all ready. Nephew Qin has worked hard. Seeing Qin Daoxian, Yang Linyuan immediately stood up from his seat, greeted him in 3 or 2 steps and said with a smile, please sit, please sit. Let's greet each other. Yang Linyuan looked at Qin Daoxian and his granddaughter Yang Gongwan's 2 deputies, nodded and said, our only goal in this defensive battle is not to annihilate the enemy, but to resist the enemy's offensive. As long as the reinforcements from Qinyuan Jianzong arrive, it will be a victory. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian and Yang Gongwan looked at each other and frowned. Master Commander, will Qinyuan Jianzong send reinforcements? Yang Linyuan was stunned for a moment, and then he said firmly, yes, definitely. After a pause he explained, the previous idea of Qinyuan Sword Sect was to lure Xinjue Renren to take action, but Xinjue Renren is too tolerant and has been hiding behind the scenes. But this time is different. Once Zhangzhou Xianqing is broken, the entire Zhangzhou is in danger of being occupied, followed by Taizhou and Jingzhou. When things develop to that point, Qinyuan Jianzong will also feel a headache when he comes to clean up the mess. Therefore, Zhangzhou Xianqing is the bottom line of Qinyuan Sword Sect, and they will never sit back and watch Zhangzhou Xianqing fall. Hear this. Yang Gongwan, whose cultivation base has broken through to the 1st floor of the Purple Mansion, pouted and said, I'm afraid it has something to do with Yi Wudeo's base here. Ha! Yang Linyuan stroked his beard and smiled. Of course that's part of the reason. As we all know, the suzerain faction and the elder faction of Qinyuan Sword Sect have always been at odds, but this time, the extermination of the corpse group and the complete extermination of Xinjue Jinren are probably highly unified opinions of the 2 factions. Inside the command post, Qin Daoxian listened to Yang Linyuan's words silently and remained silent. These are common-sense things in the eyes of the big family, and he heard them all for the first time. He knew that Yang Linyuan and Yang Gongwan's words did not necessarily mean to point him. Sovereign faction, elder faction. Obviously, the interior of Qinyuan Sword Sect is not monolithic, but also has factions. In fact, this is also quite normal. Even in the previous life, there were disagreements, conflicts of interest and factions within each country. In this world, that's obviously the case too. It has only been 400 years since the Qianyuan Jianzong sect master succeeded. This time, for true monarch Yuanying's lifespan of 3,000 years, and primordial spirit cultivator as high as 10,000 years of lifespan, although it is not a flick of a finger, it is indeed not a long time. The Qianyuan Sword sect master can firmly hold the position of the sect master, and lead the entire Wanxinghai to defeat the Xianqing Dao League, which is already an outstanding ability. It is simply impossible for her to resolve all internal conflicts and build the entire Qianyuan Sword sect like a piece of iron. After all, this is a world where great power is attributed to itself. The people of the Qianyuan Sword sect elder faction are willing to honor the third elder. Can the Qianyuan Sword sect master kill all the elders headed by the third elder? If you really want to do this, Qianyuan Jianzong will fall into civil war and split in an instant. A few people talking. A shrill alarm sounded throughout the immortal city of Zhangzhou. It's time to withdraw the defensive formation Daoxian. Gongwan, come with me. Yang Linyuan looked serious. Yes, Lord Commander. Qin Daoxian and Yang Gongwan followed closely behind. Outside Zhangzhou Xianqing. It stopped with a shrill siren. The fifth order defense formation was slowly lifted, and as the defensive formation was withdrawn, the corpses outside were like hot water being poured into a frying pan, completely boiling. Roar. The roar that made the eardrums hurt came into Qin Daoxuan's ears. The corpse group relied on the 100 Jianghu city wall, and used the method of stacking arhats to fill in the height of the city wall little by little, ignoring that the bottom zombies had been crushed into flesh. 100 feet high city wall. Qin Daoxian didn't know how many corpses were needed to fill it up, and he didn't have the mind to count them. He only knew that the tide of corpses in front of him, trampling on the corpses of his companions, rushed towards the Zhangzhou coalition forces. Scott. A group of flying zombies shrouded in cloudy clouds rushed towards the 43 defense zone. Atom. The corpse group attacked the monks in the 43 defense zone in two ways. Kill. Yang Linyuan roared loudly, took the lead and controlled the Feijin tide to chop the corpses over. The sword glow was 100 feet long, and a sword cut a huge gap in the corpse. I don't know how many zombies were killed by the sword, but soon more zombies filled the gap and rushed towards the crowd. Don't be afraid to die. Unless. This terrifying pressure made some timid monks tremble. Chapter 200. In the face of this dazzling scene, Qin Daoxuan's face was calm. After all, this is the first time he has participated in such a large-scale war. Looking at the black mass of corpses rushing towards him in front of him, Qin Daoxuan's Danshan's true essence suddenly erupted, and above the sea of qi in the Dantian, a little star was like a substance, almost condensing into a star. Moment. The entire 43 defense zone was shrouded in a transparent rain curtain. Inside the rain curtain, sword energy turned into raindrops and rustled down. As soon as the corpse rushed into the rain curtain with a radius of nearly 10,000 feet, it was torn to shreds by the rain curtain transformed by the endless sword energy. In an instant, the corpse group in the 43 defense zone was almost emptied by Qin Daoxian alone. This? Yang Linyuan stared blankly at the scene in front of him, and could hardly believe his eyes. Lead the mighty. On the battlefield of the 43 defense zone, it was not just who shouted such a sentence. Immediately after, the words "Lead the mighty" resounded throughout the battlefield. In the corpse, Sun Fu soon noticed the abnormality of the 43 defense zone. It's him? Sun Fu's golden pupils shrank slightly. Obviously he recognized Qin Daoxian. Immediately, a grim smile appeared on his green face and fangs. I see how much real energy you have consumed. Say it. He waved his hand and more corpses rushed towards the defense area where Qin Daoxian was. Even the pressure of the 42 defense zone and the 44 defense zone is light. The commander of the Zifu in these two defense zones actually had the time to observe the battle situation in the 43 defense zones with his spiritual sense. Following Sun Fu's instructions, the group of corpses coming towards the 43 defense zone was even more terrifying. Facing the group of corpses as deep as the sea, Qin Daoxian had no expression on his face, as if those killed by his sword energy were just grass and mustard. Although there were more corpses, they couldn't break into the rain curtain of sword energy constructed by Qin Daoxian. Including the group of corpses in the sky, they charged towards the rain screen countless times, but apart from being cut into pieces, they were of no use at all. Occasionally there was a powerful late-stage foundation-building zombie, relying on its strong defensive ability and recovery ability, forcibly rushed to within 100 feet of Qin Daoxian, and was chopped into pieces by a white mark. In the entire 43 defense zone, Qin Daoxian alone completely blocked the corpse group. Yang Gongwan looked at Qin Daoxian with great power. She couldn't believe her eyes. Ever since she gave up comprehending the sword intent and chose to break through the purple mansion, she thought that relying on her water spirit body, she would never be weaker than Qin Daoxian, who had not yet reached the middle stage of foundation establishment. But she didn't expect that Qin Daoxian's strength was far stronger than she imagined. Such strength. Even a late-stage cultivator of the purple mansion might not be able to do it, right? Yang Gongwan thought to herself. Time passed little by little. So, an hour has passed. Such a high-strength maintenance of the sword qi rain curtain to resist the corpse group, even with Qin Daoxian's real yuan reserves, is somewhat insufficient. With the constant consumption of true yuan, Qin Daoxian's face finally turned pale. Far away. Seeing Qin Daoxian's pale face, Sun Fu breathed a sigh of relief. Boy, the battlefield is not the place for you to be brave. If you want to resist the corpse group with your own strength, do you think you are a Jindan cultivator or Yuanying Jinjuan? With a sneer, Sun Fu stopped paying attention to Qin Daoxian. In his opinion, the true essence will be exhausted in just an hour, and whether Qin Daoxian can save his life in the next attack of the corpse is a matter of two things. Qin Daoxian's Dantian is full of energy. A third-grade fortune-telling white lotus is quietly suspended, and above the third-grade fortune-telling white lotus, a bright starlight illuminates the entire Dantian Qi Si, the lotus of the third-grade good fortune. These 3 years. With the improvement of Qin Daoxian's weapon refining rank, he has promoted almost all of his magical tools. Among them, naturally also includes his natal magic tool, the White Lotus of Good Fortune. Originally, the second-grade fortune-telling White Lotus could only store about 3 times the true essence of the late-stage cultivator of foundation building, and it was promoted to the third-grade Good Fortune White Lotus, that is, after the third-order magic weapon. The ability of fortune-telling White Lotus to store true essence skyrocketed. After Qin Daoxian's test, his ability to store true yuan has only increased by 6 times. That is to say, in this third-grade Good Fortune White Lotus, at least 18 times the true essence of the late foundation-building cultivator is stored. Coupled with the amount of real essence stored in Qin Daoxian's own Dantian Qi Si, Qin Daoxian's amount of real essence has reached more than 19 times the original. In other words, at this level of consumption he can support 19 hours. It is far more than 19 hours. You must know that during the battle, Qin Daoxian's true essence can also be continuously recovered. With his true essence recovery speed, Qin Daoxian can basically support him indefinitely if he eats another Huiyuan pill. Unless the spiritual energy inside Zhangzhou Xianqing is exhausted, he cannot recover his true essence. Soon. 10 hours passed. The rest of the zones were all at risk and only zones 42, 43 and 44 were the most secure. But if you look closely you will find it. The corpses in these 3 defense zones are all charging towards the 43 defense zone. The 42 defense zones and the 44 defense zones are almost reduced to the existence of soy sauce. The rest of the Zifu cultivators were all guarding against Qin Daoxian's attack by the opposite Zifu corpse servants, affecting Qin Daoxian's performance. After all, they couldn't last as long as Qin Daoxian in the group attack. For 10 hours, Qin Daoxian maintained this posture, motionless. Ahead, the rain curtain transformed by the sword energy did not stop for a moment. Outside the city walls of Zhangzhou, the countless tides of corpses were stopped by Qin Daoxian by himself, unable to take a step beyond the thunderous pool. Originally with the heat of the war, Sun Fu had already forgotten Qin Daoxian, the fool who made big moves as soon as he came up. But a full 10 hours passed. He was stunned when he found that Qin Daoxian was still maintaining this offensive. How is it possible? Sun Fu murmured, how can someone in this world have such a terrifying reserve of true essence? Although I couldn't believe the scene in front of me, I saw Qin Daoxian's comfortable appearance. How can there be a little bit of real essence exhausted? Sun Fu was not surprised when he said that he could hold on for another 10 hours. After a little induction, Sun Fu discovered that in just 10 hours, nearly 10 million zombies died at the hands of Qin Daoxian. This number has reached 1/10 of the entire corpse tide. If it takes another 10 days and a half to go on like this corpse tide will be pacified by Qin Daoxian alone. Thinking of this, Sun Fu felt an absurd feeling in his heart. The corpse tide that made the entire Zhangzhou feel like a great enemy would be consumed by a mere foundation-building cultivator? Sun Fu only felt that he couldn't let out a breath in his heart, which was extremely uncomfortable. Withdraw. The order was issued, and the offensive of the corpse tide suddenly slowed down. All the corpses retreated in a forbidden manner, and not a single zombie was fighting. This is also the horror of the corpse tide. No disobedience to the controller's orders, which the cultivator army simply cannot do. Call. Seeing the black tide receding in front of him, Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. Behind. Yang Linyuan and Yang Gongwan looked at him with shock and strangeness. Qin Daoxian turned his head, saw the faces of the two and frowned. What's wrong? Chapter 201. Qin, nephew Qin. Yang Linyuan thought about it for a long time, but couldn't come up with a better wording. You are. Yang Gongwan, who was on the side, didn't have so many scruples and couldn't help but ask, how did you do it? I only heard that Jiangxia's sword essence is stronger than Sun's true essence, but I have never heard that the reserve ratio. How many ordinary foundation establishment monks are there? She furrowed her eyebrows tightly. I'm afraid your real Yuan reserves are more than the mana of the late Zifu monks. Fairy Yang is very praised. Qin Daoxian bowed his hands. It's not that I have a lot of real energy, but the sword intent I have learned. I am good at group attack and consume less real energy. Talking. He staggered and his face became pale. If the corpse doesn't retreat, I can't hold it anymore. Yes, is it? Yang Gongwan looked at him suspiciously. Qin Daoxian nodded sincerely. It's absolutely true. All right. Yang Gongwan put on an expression of trusting you temporarily. Compared with the innocence of his granddaughter, Yang Linyuan is much more shrewd. He didn't believe in the nonsense that Qin Daoxian's comprehension of sword intent is good at group attack and consumes less real energy. If Qin Daoxian lasted for a few hours, it can be said that his sword intent consumes less real energy. But Qin Daoxian maintained this offensive for a full 10 hours. Not to mention a cultivator in the early stage of foundation establishment, it is estimated that the real energy of 10 cultivators in the early stage of foundation establishment will be exhausted. However, Qin Daoxian was still alive and kicking like no one else. If it wasn't for Yang Gongwan's repeated questioning, Qin Daoxian's complexion would not have changed, and it was always as rosy as ever. Obviously, Qin Daoxian has his own secrets. It's just that this kind of secret, others don't want to tell. He can't ask. He glanced at the defensive formation outside the city walls of Zhangzhou Xianqing. Yang Linyuan said with a smile, let's go to the headquarters hall together. Senior Yang, please go first. No, let's go together. Yang Linyuan didn't dare to take it, and hurriedly made a gesture of invitation. See. Qin Daoxian nodded and walked with him towards the headquarters hall. Yang Gongwan followed behind the two. So, the commanders and deputy commanders of a total of 97 defense zones in Zhangzhou Xianqing gathered together in the headquarters hall. Inside the headquarters hall. In the first place was the commander-in-chief of the Zhangzhou coalition, Zhou Mingho. After changing his usual gentle temperament, Zhou Mingho's face was solemn at this time, but upon closer inspection, he would find that there was a faint hint of joy hidden under his solemn expression. Everyone. Zhou Mingho's voice resounded through the hall. We resisted the offensive of the corpse tide today. It turns out that the corpse tide is not as terrifying as everyone imagined. In addition to the number, the strength of a single zombie is not worth mentioning. Even the lowest purifying cultivator can easily strangle them. Zhou Mingho paused. In this battle alone, it is roughly estimated that the number of zombies killed in each defense zone exceeded 50 million. Boom. As soon as Zhou Mingho finished speaking, there was a violent discussion in the hall. So much. I didn't expect the corpse tide to be so vulnerable. Yeah, if that's the case, Zhangzhou Xianqing can be defended completely. There was a lot of discussion in the hall. A long time. Zhou Mingho pressed his hand down gently. The hall was quiet again. Especially our 43rd defense zone, the number of zombies killed in this zone alone is nearly 10 million. Zhou Mingho continued, therefore we have enough reasons to believe that our Zhangzhou coalition will be able to pacify this corpse mess. 43 defense zones? This is the defense zone led by fellow Taoist Yang, right? Seems like it. I didn't expect that after Yang Daoyu broke through to Zifu, his strength increased so much. The number of zombies killed in one defense area is more than the number of killings in our other 10 defense areas. Yes. Hearing the discussions of the people around him, Yang Linyuan, who was standing in the crowd, was sitting on pins and needles. He glanced at Qin Daoxian uncomfortably and said, Nephew Qin, do you want me to explain a few words? No need. Qin Daoxian smiled and shook his head. In such a fierce battlefield, only the monks who were close to the two defense zones could see the scene of his great power. As for the other defense areas, they were all busy fighting the corpse group with all their might, so they didn't care about the record of other defense areas. Encourage everyone to redistribute some materials. The commanders of each defense zone slowly withdrew from the hall. Nephew Qin, please stay. Just when Qin Daoxian raised his leg and was about to leave, Zhou Mingho stopped him. Senior Zhou. Seeing everyone leave, Qin Daoxian bowed his hands. My nephew. Zhou Mingho took 2 steps forward, grabbed Qin Daoxian's right hand and said excitedly, I didn't expect that a genius swordsman like you would emerge from my Guang'an residence. Ah. Qin Daoxian quickly cupped his hands and said humbly, Senior Zhou is wrong. I just happen to understand that the sword intent is good at group attack. It is very effective against these low-level zombies, but against high-level zombie groups, the effect is limited. I see. Zhou Mingho nodded knowingly, but now the low-level corpse group is troublesome, hundreds of millions of corpse groups, even if we have more than 100 Zifu monks, we can't resist them all. Nephew Qin, do you understand what I mean? Senior Zhou means. I mean, I want you to be a firefighter for this war. Firefighter? Qin Daoxian probably knew Zhou Mingho's intentions, but he still asked, I don't know what Senior Zhou is referring to. Although you are in the 43 defense zone and the corpse group can't cross the city wall one step, the other defense zones are still a little precarious in this defensive battle, and they are almost broken by the corpse group. I want you to take into account the entire defense line of Zhangzhou Xianqing and support all defense areas at any time. This? Qin Daoxian looked hesitant. Don't worry, I will send someone to ensure your safety. You can only be responsible for clearing the low-level corpse. Say it. Zhou Mubai on the side smiled and said, I don't know if I'm here to be Brother Chen's bodyguard, can you rest assured? Qin Daoxian glanced at Zhou Mubai and said with a smile, Brother Zhou guards, I am naturally relieved. After speaking, he turned to look at Zhou Mingho. Senior Zhou, do you mean that Brother Zhou and I will set up a special battlefield rescue team, ready to intervene at any time to break the defense area and relieve the pressure on these defense areas? Right. Zhou Mingho nodded. In order to prevent the corpse from sending top-level Zifu corpse servants to attack you, I will let Mu Bai guard your safety so that you can let go. Hear this. Qin Daoxian finally understood what Zhou Mingho meant. Obviously, his performance in Defense Zone 43 today amazed Zhou Mingho and gave him the idea of being able to defend Zhangzhou Xianqing. Originally, I thought that no matter what we did, our hope of defending Zhangzhou Immortal City was very slim, but in today's battle, we wiped out 50 million corpses from the enemy. As long as you fight like this 10 more times, the corpse group will naturally be wiped out. And Nephew Qin Xian, you are the biggest variable in our battle. Whether it was me or the enemy, I never imagined that you would have such a terrifying means of group attack. Chapter 202. After the war. Treat wounded soldiers, care for fallen monks, burn corpses, and be careful not to turn into zombies again after being attacked by evil spirits. In each defense zone, these works are being carried out in an orderly manner. Although more than 50 million zombies were wiped out in this battle, the number of cultivators lost was as high as nearly 100,000. Although the Zhangzhou coalition had a total of several million, most of the hundreds of thousands were elites in the late stage of qi refining and foundation building. It can be said. This battle also left the entire Zhangzhou coalition devastated. Of course, among all the defense zones, the least damaged is the 43 defense zone with 0 casualties. The monks in the 43 defense zone watched Qin Daoxian perform alone for 10 hours. As a result, the pressure of the 2 defense zones was greatly reduced because of the existence of Qin Daoxian, and there were very few cultivators who were damaged. Therefore, the monks in these 3 defense zones were very grateful to Qin Daoxian. Brother Zhou, I'm just restoring true essence, you don't have to follow me all the time. Seeing Zhou Mubai following him, Qin Daoxian said helplessly. That won't do. Zhou Mubai shook his head with a smile. Before this battle is over, I will be your personal bodyguard. Anyone who wants to move you must step over my corpse. You restore yours and I will protect the law for you. Seeing him like this, Qin Daoxian cupped his hands with a wry smile. Brother Lao Zhou. You are welcome. Step into a cave house built by the spirit eye of the Lord of Zhangzhou Xianqing. Qin Daoxian raced against time to recover his true essence. In this battle, although he showed great power in front of everyone, it did not mean that his true essence was really so strong. Qin Daoxian relied on his special natal magic weapon, the 3rd-grade fortune-telling White Lotus. Up to 10 hours of consumption. The 3rd-grade Good Fortune White Lotus probably consumed less than 1/5 of the reserved true essence and 4/5 remained. In other words, in a battle of this intensity, Qin Daoxian could last 5 days and 5 nights at most. If you take Huiyuan Dan, it will last longer. That is to say, if it is exhausted, the corpse group is really not enough for Qin Daoxian. After all, the opponent of the corpse group is not Qin Daoxian alone, but also the huge Zhangzhou coalition. If Qin Daoxian maintains the rain screen sword energy for 5 days and 5 nights, it is roughly estimated that at least nearly 100 million corpses can be killed. With such a terrifying killing effect, almost one person can top 20 or 30 cultivators in the defense zone. Sword cultivators like Zhou Mubai and Zhang Xianling, including other cultivators of the Purple House, can also kill such a large area. But it can't be as durable as Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian's Siyu sword intent was good at group attack. He didn't actually deceive Yang Linyuan. The real energy consumed by his sword energy rain curtain was much lower than that of other monks using large-scale spells. Coupled with his natal magic weapon, the third-grade good fortune White Lotus, it caused such a terrifying record. Without one of these two conditions, Qin Daoxian could not achieve the level he is today. Inside the cave, the rich and pure aura was quickly refined by Qin Daoxian, and then quickly stored in the third-grade fortune-telling White Lotus. In the center of the Dantian Qi Si, a white lotus flower was quietly suspended. With the infusion of true essence, this lotus flower emits a gleaming white light, which illuminates Qin Daoxian's Dantian Qi Si even brighter, and even the stars above are hidden. Time passed little by little. Outside Zhangzhou Xianqing, the corpses gathered again. Obviously they are not prepared to give the monk time to recover. During the time when the troops were withdrawing, their commanders had already figured out how to deal with the variable Qin Daoxian. Southwest waters of Wangxinghai. A spirit boat with a verdant appearance quickly crossed the sky like a stream of light. On the spirit boat, a female nun with a sword in her left hand stood quietly on the deck, staring straight ahead. This female nun was tall and slender, wearing a light cyan gauze, her face was cold and glam, and there was a hint of sharpness in her beautiful eyes. Sister. Behind him, a maid in a goose-yellow gauze whispered, "Why do you want to take the job of bait? With your relationship with the sect master, you can." Before she could finish speaking, the sharp color in the eyes of the lady in Tsingyi faded, and she said softly, "The corpse chaos in Zhangzhou is getting worse and worse. If we can't get rid of the old demon Shinjue earlier, I'm afraid the corpse chaos will bring disaster to Jingzhou and Taizhou. During this period, how many innocent mortals and monks should have died?" Speaking of this, the female cultivator in Tsingyi sighed. "Senior sister, you are so kind, but it's a pity that the disciples in the sect always mistakenly think that you have too much murderous intentions and are not suitable for the position of the young sect master." The female nun in the goose-yellow gauze seemed to be holding an injustice for the blue-clothed nun. "The people I kill are all people who deserve to be killed. Naturally, there is no reason to hesitate." The woman in Tsingyi looked firm. "Besides, why should I care about other people's opinions about what I do?" "Sister." "Okay, don't say these spoilers." The female cultivator in green clothes grabbed the jade hand of the female cultivator in the goose-yellow gauze and said with a smile, "Do you remember what I told you before? Do not worry." Hearing this, the goose-yellow gauze female cultivator patted her small chest and assured. Seemingly not at ease, the female cultivator in Tsingyi ordered again. It wasn't until the goose-yellow gauze woman became impatient, and the blue-clothed woman gave up. "Senior sister, I heard that the old demon god Ju is extremely fierce. Back then, there was a true emperor nascent soul in the sect who fell into his hands. If you use you as a bait in case the master of Jinhai Palace misses. You, Jingxian, worry about it." The female cultivator in Tsingyi nodded her forehead. "I'm more worried that god Ju old demon won't make a move than the younger uncle misses. No way with your purple mansion's perfect cultivation, beheading all his subordinates and he won't shoot. This is too bearable. I can't bear it. How can I live in a cave in a secret realm for 400 years? When the female cultivator Qingyi said this, she also admired god Ju old demon's endurance. It is indeed a skill to be able to nest in a small cave for 400 years without moving the nest. Ask herself, she can't do it herself. This verdant spirit boat is 10 times faster than the Zhou family's spirit void battleship. A few days. Zhangzhou was faintly watching. Zhangzhou Xianqing. Qin Daoxian. Don't run if you can. Sky. Sun Fu screamed in anger. In the past 5 days, Qin Daoxian was like a cunning loach. Whenever the defense area was in danger, he flew to the defense area in an instant, and a rain curtain of sword energy shrouded nearly 10,000 feet. Kill the corpse group, and instantly turn the crumbling defense zone into impregnable. 5 full days down. Sun Fu took a group of late-stage corpse servants in the Zifu to look for the trace of Qin Daoxian all day long, wanting to play the decapitation tactics. However, Qin Daoxian was protected by Zhou Mubai, and there were only a few late-stage corpse servants in the Purple Mansion, and Qin Daoxian could not be helped at all. In addition, each defense zone has one or several Zifu cultivators in charge. The other party resisted and procrastinated casually, and Qin Daoxian disappeared without a trace. Just under this kind of frenzied killing, the corpse tide gathered in Sangzhou Xianqing decreased visibly to the naked eye. When Fairy Qi Yao arrived, there were only tens of millions of corpses trapped outside Sangzhou Xianqing. Compared with the scene that covered the sky and the sun 5 days ago, it was a world of difference. Senior sister, with this corpse tide, Yi Wudao actually ran away? The goose yellow gauze female cultivator looked at the corpse tide outside Sangzhou Xianqing, a little unbelievable. The scene in front of you, no matter how you look at it, is that the Zhangzhou allied forces are fighting against the corpse tide. This scene is simply a magnified version of the battle between the East Defense Zone of Guang'an Prefecture and the Lianhua Island Corpse Group. Hearing the doubts of the junior sister, Fairy Qi Yao took a closer look and finally found the reason. Qin Daoxian, don't run if you have something. We are fighting in an upright manner. Don't run. Sun Fu roared in exasperation. See this scene. Fairy Qi Yao was embarrassed to find that her bait job seemed to be robbed by an unfamiliar sword repairer. Chapter 203. Obviously, not only Qi Yao himself, but also the female cultivator wearing a goose yellow gauze next to him discovered this scene. Inside Sangzhou Xianqing. Under the rain curtain of sword qi, the corpses were harvested and piled up in the open space outside Sangzhou Xianqing. The low-level monks who made soy sauce released fire attribute spells to burn the wreckage to improve Qin Daoxian's killing efficiency. Senior sister, this sword repairer seems to have robbed you of your life. The goose yellow gauze woman pointed at Qin Daoxian, who showed great power on the city wall of Sangzhou Xianqing, and muttered, I know. Fairy Qi Yao and Xing Yi said indifferently. She, who is proficient in kendo, looked at the scene in front of her and said with a frown, It is the Siyu Jianyi in the water Xing Jianyi, but according to the records in the Zhongmen classics, although the Siyu Jianyi is good at group attack, it is also there won't be so much power, especially its durability. As expected of the true disciple of Qinyuan sword sect, Qi Yao discovered the problem in less than a single stick of incense. The rain curtain of sword energy released by Qin Daoxian was too wide and lasted for too long, which was completely unreasonable. The only explanation is that the strength of this person's consciousness and the reserves of true essence far exceed the normal level of a foundation-building cultivator. Qin Daoxian did not expect it. Actually, someone only observed his full strength as a stick of incense time, and then felt his true strength. Sister, what should we do now? Watch it change. Qi Yao thought for a while. Sangzhou Xianqing. In the past 5 days, Sun Fu was almost exhausted by Qin Daoxian's sloppy play. What made it even more desperate was that the number of corpses was almost exhausted under the double consumption of the Zhangzhou allied forces and Qin Daoxian. To know. The huge corpse group was one of the biggest reasons for him to dare to gallop in Sangzhou. Unexpectedly, now this reliance has been abolished by a mere foundation-building cultivator. Even if this foundation establishment cultivator is a sword cultivator, his real strength is comparable to that of the Zifu cultivator. Qin Daoxian. Sun Fu finally felt the anger of his younger brother when he faced him. Obviously this person can be easily pinched to death by him, but the short-distance escape speed of the other party is not only strange but also extremely fast. In addition to Zhou Mubai's personal support, even if Sun Fu assembled 9 late-stage corpse servants of the Purple Mansion, there was nothing he could do with Qin Daoxian. But the 10 late-stage battle strength of Zifu is already the greatest strength that Sun Fu can draw. Although the Zifu side of the corpse group has more combat power, a single Zifu corpse servant is not an opponent of the Zifu cultivator. The corpse servants of the Zifu can compete with the cultivators of the Zifu of the human race, relying on the endless number of corpses, which drags down the energy of the cultivators of the Zifu of the human race. Now the number of corpses is getting smaller and smaller. The corpse servants of the Zifu are unable to deal with the cultivators of the Zifu in various defense areas, let alone being dispatched by Sun Fu. If they are recruited again, the corpse group will be completely defeated. Stop. Stop chasing. Although he saw Qin Daoxian slaughtering their corpses, Sun Fu knew. Follow up and the result is the same. For today's plan, we must not be dragged by the nose again. Think of this. Sun Fu searched for a weak defense area with only the initial cultivation base of Zifu, and led 9 late-stage corpses of Zifu to kill the defense area together. 37 defense zones. An early Zifu commander in Jianghu, watching 10 late Zifu zombies kill him, immediately broke into a cold sweat. 37 defense zone for help. After shouting at the communication array he carried with him, he immediately raised the subformation of Zhangzhou Xianqing. This subarray method is based on the 5th order mountain protection formation of Zhangzhou Xianqing. Every defense zone in Zhangzhou Xianqing is equipped with this formation. Of course, in terms of defensive ability, this subarray method cannot be compared with the 5th order mountain protection formation in Zhangzhou Xianqing. But compared with the general 4th order array method, it is not weak at all. Boom, boom, boom. A sound of hammering bombarded on the transparent defensive light curtain of the subarray method, with starting point ripples. The 10 zombies in the late period of Zifu, even Jindan Jinren, would not dare to let them continue to attack. How can a subarray that is comparable to a 4th order defensive array be able to resist it all the time? Just half a cup of tea. This subarray method is in jeopardy, and it looks like it will be broken at any time. The other side. Qin Daoxian, whose consciousness was covering the entire Zhangzhou immortal city at any time, turned his head and frowned. Brother Zhou, now all the defense zones can't be recruited, and you are the only one to solve the siege of the 37th defense zone. As soon as his consciousness was swept away, Zhou Mubai discovered the embarrassment of the 37th defense zone. But hear you? Don't worry, as long as Sun Fuss group of late-stage Zifu zombies don't come to trouble me, even if the other Zifu zombies can't be beaten, I still have the confidence to escape. Besides, there are also our Zifu cultivators in each defense area to cover me. They'll be fine here. Heard. Zhou Mubai, who waited, nodded. If the 37th defense zone is broken, it will definitely be a heavy blow to the current good situation. Even if you win in the end, you will lose a lot. Zhou Mubai naturally didn't want to see this. Okay, Brother Qin, be careful. After Zhou Mubai finished speaking, a flash of light flashed, and he went to support the 37th defense area. Just when Zhou Mubai went to support him, Fairy Qi Yao, who had been on the sidelines of the battle, also nodded and said, "Let's go, it's our turn to take action." Okay. After watching for so long, it was finally time to make a move. The goose yellow gauze girl's pretty face was full of eager expressions. There are 3 Zifu sword cultivators, and 2 of them are late Zifu sword cultivators. As soon as he made his move, he beheaded 3 late-stage corpse servants of Zifu on the spot. 37 defense zones. Sun Fu saw that his subordinates were beheaded and killed 3 in a single encounter, and his expression changed immediately, and then he laughed. Jie, your Qinyuan sword sect really has left behind. Sun Fuyin smiled, as if the one who just died was not his subordinate at all. The masters of the 2 late-stage Zifu sword cultivators really expected everything. However, you think that the 2 Zifu sword cultivators will be able to win the battle steadily. Are we? So far, do you still have any cards? Zhou Mubai looked at the other party, but his consciousness searched the void carefully, trying to find the backhand under Sun Fubu. What cards can they have? Qi Yao said coldly. It's just the bereaved dog of Shinju Alaoma. Humph. When Sun Fu heard Qi Yao insulting his master, his face was grim, but there was a flash of pleasure in his eyes. Zhou Mubai, you don't have to look for it, my master will not come. Your little tricks, even I can't hide it, and you still want to lure my master into being fooled? Ridiculous. Shinju old demon is still as greedy for life and fear of death as ever. Fairy Qi Yao nodded. Naturally, if you are greedy for life and fear death, if you are not greedy for life and fear death, how can you hide for 400 years, and only dare to send you 2 wastes out to stir up the situation? Yes. Sun Fu smiled coldly. That's not necessarily true. The other side. Qin Daoxuan's sword Qi rain curtain shrouded the entire 53 defense area, killing the corpses that rushed from the 53 defense area to the ground, and the army was defeated. After 5 days, Qin Daoxian had already accumulated considerable experience in the abuse of vegetables. He is confident that in Wan Xinghai, there should be no one more experienced than him when it comes to slaughtering low-level monks. After all, even the Golden Core Cultivator or even the true monarch Yuan Ying will not be like him. In just 5 days, almost all of them are killing low-level corpses. Although the strength of the zombies in the corpse group is much lower than that of the monks in the Qi refining period, there are also a large number of high-level zombies whose strength is comparable to the monks in the Qi refining period and even the foundation building period. But when Qin Daoxian killed it, there was no difference, at most it took a little more effort. In other words, Replacing these zombies with monks in the chi refining stage and foundation building stage who would not form a battle against the enemy would not make much difference to Qin Daoxian. Of course, the foundation building cultivators here refer to those cultivators who do not wear spiritual armor. The base building cultivator was wearing a second-tier high-grade spirit armor, and Qin Daoxian's sword energy rain curtain could not break through the opponent's defense at all. Qin Daoxian was distracted, while maintaining the sword chi rain curtain to kill the enemy, while on the other hand he used his divine sense to observe the battlefield in the 37th defense zone. When he heard Sun Fu's sentence, "That's not necessarily," my heart suddenly tightened. "What are you looking at?" An extremely terrifying voice sounded behind Qin Daoxian, causing him to sweat coldly. He turned around slowly. A silver-haired old man stood behind him. Silver hair, golden blood, jade bones all over the body, Dao Yin circulates. It seems that he himself is the interpretation of Dao, the collection of Dao. "You are the body of a fairy." Qin Daoxian had such a word in his heart. However, how is it possible? How could there be immortals in this world? The last recorded true immortal of Mahayana who ascended to the upper realm in this world was also a matter of hundreds of thousands of years ago. "Who I am?" The silver-haired old man smiled and said, "Isn't it just to lure me out? Now here I am. Why are you putting on such an expression again?" "God. Absolute. True. Human." Qin Daoxian looked directly into his eyes and said word by word, "It's you, idiot." The silver-haired old man smiled. He raised his legs and walked towards Qin Daoxian step by step. 53 Defense Zone. The entire defense zone, up to the cultivator of Zifu, down to the cultivator of the chi refining stage, all stood there dumbfounded, motionless as if someone had captured their souls. Qin Daoxian's heart is beating like a drum, and he has never felt so close to death for a moment. "This is your supernatural power to become famous, the divine light of the soul?" "Oh." The silver-haired old man paused in his footsteps and laughed. "I can't believe that in the past so many years, there are still people who remember this old man's famous stunt." "Good. Really good." "Ah. Half an hour." Shinjue Jinren stopped laughing and looked at Qin Daoxian. "Since you recognize it, in order to reward you, let you die under the divine light, and it will not waste your life." "Okay." Qin Daoxian nodded. "I want to see if Ding Soul Divine Light has the power as rumored. It is said that Ding Soul Divine Light can even hold the true monarch nascent soul, but I don't believe it." "True monarch Yuanying?" The silver-haired old man sneered. "True monarch Yuanying is a piece of shit." "Say it." A ray of divine light shot out from the void and went straight to Qin Daoxian's face. Dingpa Xinguang instantly tore apart Qin Daoxian's sea of consciousness. "Know the sea. The golden scriptures sit in it as if the eternal towering existence." The divine light shone into the sea of consciousness, but did not touch the divine soul. The golden scripture shook slightly, and the divine light was absorbed by the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, and not even a wave was raised. The real person Shinjue watched Qin Daoxian being fixed on the spot by Dingpa Xinguang, and shook his head with a smile. "Jianxiu? Ah, that's all." "Say it." With a palm of his hand, he slashed down according to Qin Daoxian's Tianling cover. "Who knows?" Qin Daoxian, who was originally standing still, flashed and disappeared in place in an instant. "Become a sword light." The incarnation of the sword light that remained on the spot was instantly torn to shreds by the silver-haired old man with the palm of his hand. Seeing that Qin Daoxian actually broke free from his divine light, Shinjuezhen was completely shocked. Immediately, he narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile, "Interesting, really interesting. I didn't expect you to have such a rare divine soul defense magic weapon." After speaking, he raised his hand, ready to end Qin Daoxian completely. But the next moment, there was a ripple in the space. I saw a hand as delicate as white jade stretched out from the ripples in the space and grabbed the right hand raised by Shinjue Jinren. "Little mouse, I finally caught you." As the space ripples disappeared, a young figure appeared in front of everyone. This person is none other than the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace, Qin Zhan. Shinjuezhen turned his head in horror. An extremely young Taoist, dressed in a blue Taoist robe with Taoist on his head, his eyes full of pride, the corners of his mouth grinned as if mocking him. "You are. I'm your grandpa." "Say it." A punch hit the corner of Shinju Zenren's mouth. It knocked him thousands of feet away. After flying thousands of miles away, Shinju Jinren seemed to have hit an invisible barrier and was thrown away. Embarrassed, he stood up in the void. Immortal Shinjue touched the space barrier behind him in disbelief, and looked at the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace with a shocked expression. "Space cage." Tiske, I still have some eyesight to see. The hall master of Jinhai Palace walked towards him step by step. Clearly the distance between the two was thousands of meters, but he only took 3 steps before appearing in front of Shinju Jinren. It seems that the inheritance of immortals you have obtained is really remarkable. Humph. Shinju Jinren snorted coldly. Do you know what I hate most about your Qinyuan sword sect? Which point? It's that you always put on a high posture. It's disgusting. There was a hint of ruthlessness in the eyes of Shinjue. They are all monks. Who is more noble than the other? Say it. Immortal Shinjue instantly disappeared in place, and the next second, a fist with golden light slammed directly into the face of the hall master of Jinhai Palace. Faced with a punch that ripped the space apart, the hall master of Jinhai Palace stretched out his jade-like palm and gently clenched the fist. The body of an immortal, the body of immortality. Unfortunately, you can't exert 1/1000th of the power of this body. Talking. The hall master of Jinhai Palace stretched out a finger and tapped it lightly. The space in front of him suddenly collapsed. Shinju Jinren became smaller and smaller in front of him, and finally, a transparent bead the size of a glass bead was suspended in the palm of the Jinhai Hall's master. If you look closely, you will find that inside this glass bead, there is a small man the size of a fingernail locked inside. Chapter 204. Looking at the transparent bead in the palm of his hand, the hall master of Jinhai Palace put it back into his sleeve. Then he raised his head and glanced at the tragic battlefield in Sangzhou Xianqing. God, you old demon, it's not as good as a real beast. Suck. The hall master of Jinhai Palace pointed his finger again. Within a radius of hundreds of miles, the space ripples like water ripples. This space ripple seems to be able to distinguish between the enemy, and when it passes by the cultivator, it does not hurt at all. When passing the surging corpses, the other party fell to the ground one after another, completely turning into corpses. Looking down from the sky, the corpse group collapsed to the ground as if they were harvesting wheat. The scene was so shocking that the Zhangzhou cultivator who was fighting the corpse group was stunned. Corpses present. Except for the 6 corpse servants of the late Zifu led by Sun Fu in the 37th Defense Area, who were still precariously under the siege of Zhoumubai and other Jianxiu, none of them survived. 1,000 feet away, Qin Daoxian looked at the cyan figure standing proudly in the sky in shock, and his heart was not only shocked but also shocked. There really are such powerful people in this world. I just don't know what the cultivator in front of me is, true monarch Yuaning? Or the great power of Yuanshan. After killing tens of millions of corpses with one finger, the hall master of Jinhai Palace turned his head, glanced at Qin Daoxian and smiled at him. Then he turned his attention to the direction of the 37th defense zone. Qin Daoxian swallowed and spit. He didn't care about the changes in the consciousness sea. He flew to the hall master of Jinhai Palace and said, Junior Guang'an House cultivator Qin Daoxian, I have seen Senior. After speaking, he lowered his head, not daring to look at the other party's face. Sangzhou actually has a new sword repairer. It's gratifying. The voice of the hall master of Jinhai Palace came into Qin Daoxian's ears. Thanks to you for attracting the old demon god Ju this time. Saying that, a trace of regret flashed on the face of the Jinhai Hall's master. Unfortunately, what I caught was only a clone of the god Ju old demon, not his body. Separate. Qin Daoxian raised his head, his face full of disbelief. After wasting so much effort and sacrificing so many people, what was caught was only a clone of the real god. The shit. Qin Daoxian cursed in his heart. Seemingly seeing what Qin Daoxian was thinking, the hall master of Jinhai Hall shook his head. Don't underestimate this avatar. If I'm not mistaken, it is the greatest support of God Ju old demon. The biggest reliance? Qin Daoxian looked puzzled. Right? The hall master of Jinhai Hall nodded. You should have heard that the immortal Shinjue received an inheritance from an immortal, right? I heard, don't you? Qin Daoxian immediately thought of the old man he had just seen. Could it be that the old man is the remains of the immortal? Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but scolded. God Ju old demon really is a beast. Beast indeed, the hall master of Jinhai Hall nodded. Not only is he extremely cruel to mortals, but he also uses the teacher's body to sacrifice his clones. The entire Wangxinghai is the only one. Qin Daoxian's consciousness swept away, and suddenly found that the battle in the 37th defense zone was not over yet. So he bowed his hands to the main hall of Jinhai Palace. Senior, I'll go help now, heard. The hall master of Jinhai Palace nodded and said with a smile, Go ahead. Yes. Say it. Qin Daoxian's light flashed, and his figure quickly appeared in the 37th defense area. Now, the low-level monks in the entire 37 defense zone are all hiding in the sub-defense formation. The monks above the Purple Mansion all surrounded the 37th defense zone. Sun Fu and the 6 Zifu monks under him were all surrounded by a group of Zifu monks. Looking at the powerful Zifu monks in the void, Sun Fu knew that today was his doom. Now, he happened to see Qin Daoxian appearing not far from him again. Sun Fu's golden pupils shrank slightly, and he stretched out his dark paws, pointing at Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian, have the ability, you and I are fighting in a grand manner. Qin Daoxian ignored Sun Fu's aggressive generals and said with his arms around him, you are a late-stage Zifu man, and you are fighting a foundation-building early stage with me. Can you be dignified and upright? I don't believe it. Sun Fu looked at everyone calmly. Don't you want to know the location of my master Dongtian? The voice just fell. A figure suddenly appeared in front of Sun Fu. It is not the master of Jinhai Palace, and who is it? Say. The master of Jinhai Palace looked at it coldly. Where is the old devil god? Feeling the terrifying coercion of the hall master of Jinhai Palace, Sun Fu only felt that it became difficult to open his mouth. Slightly restraining the pressure on his body, the hall master of Jinhai Palace said, as long as you speak out, I promise not to kill you. Don't kill me? Sun Fuin laughed. Can Qinyuan Jianzong endure an uncontrolled Zifu zombie raging in Wangxinghai? The hall master of Jinhai Palace was silent. Half an hour. He said slowly, I can put you in the realm of the Shenqing Dao League. Hearing this, Sun Fu was slightly taken aback. But he still shook his head. Forget it, I don't believe you. After speaking, he turned to look at Qin Daoxian. How about it, as long as you and I have a fight, I will tell you the location of my master. At this time, everyone focused their attention on Qin Daoxian. This battle. Almost all the monks in Sangzhou knew Qin Daoxian, a new sword cultivator in Sangzhou. It can be said, Qin Daoxian almost single-handedly supported the crumbling situation in Sangzhou Xianqing. After all, when it comes to the speed of killing low-level corpses, Jindan cultivators may have to bow down. Seeing that everyone turned their attention to himself, Qin Daoxian nodded and said solemnly, okay, since you want to fight me, I will satisfy you. The reason why he has such confidence is because the hall master of Jinhai Palace transmitted his voice to him just now and will absolutely guarantee his safety. Plus, a few years ago he played against Sun Fu's younger brother Sun Mang. With the self-created escape technique of incarnation of Jingguang, Qin Daoxian turned Sun Mang around. After so many years, Qin Daoxian's strength has increased greatly. Even if he is not Sun Fu's opponent, he will never encounter danger. Think of this. He agreed to the request of the other party. After all, if Sun Fu refused to reveal the location of Shinju Zhenren, I am afraid that no one in this world would know where Shinju Zhenren's cave is. As for using the soul-searching secret technique to search Sun Fu's soul, it would only be possible for the zombie to have a soul. Therefore, this may be the only way for people to know where God is. Whether it is for the safety of the family or the stability of Sangzhou in the future, Qin Daoxian must stand up. He stood up today, and all his colleagues in Sangzhou, including the hall master of Jinhai Palace, owe him a favor. With such a disparity in cultivation, Qin Daoxian still dared to stand up, and the hall master of Jinhai Palace couldn't help but think of him higher. So, everyone gave up a vast space for Qin Daoxian and Sun Fu. As for Sun Fu's 6 corpse servants, they were wiped out by the master of Jinhai Palace. Standing out of thin air, Qin Daoxian looked at Sun Fu thousands of feet away. Sun Fu also looked at him. For some reason, Qin Daoxian couldn't see any fighting intent in Sun Fu's eyes. Instead, he had a calm look. Seeing this kind of look, Qin Daoxian was slightly heartbroken. Why does he feel calm? Seemingly seeing Qin Daoxian's doubts, Sun Fu said, Qin Daoxian, aren't you curious, where has my brother gone? What? Sudden. Qin Daoxian's heart tightened suddenly. Sun Fu's younger brother, the younger brother who has always been inseparable with him. It seems that in the process of the corpse tide attacking Sangzhou Xianqing, he did not see his younger brother Sun Mang. If you beat me fast enough, you might be able to collect corpses for your Qin family. Jejia. Sun Fu laughed wantonly. When Qin Daoxian heard this, his murderous intent skyrocketed. After these days of fighting and constantly beheading corpses, the murderous aura accumulated by Qin Daoxian is no weaker than any soldier on the front line of Izumo. Die. Qin Daoxian's sword turned into a star, and immediately slashed towards Sun Mang's Dantian. The rainbow lightsaber is lightning fast. The star rays penetrated the sky, hitting Sun Fu's Dantian directly. Boom. In the nick of time, Sun Fu slashed the flying rainbow lightsaber with one claw. Looking at the buzzing rainbow lightsaber, Sun Fu glanced at his two severed fingers, nodded and said, "Your strength has improved so fast, just a few years. Before, you couldn't even break my brother's defense, but now you can actually hurt me, not bad." Qin Daoxian said nothing. The stars fell like meteors, one after another, bombarding Sun Fu's Dantian. Sun Fu blocked left and right, constantly flying the flying sword. But Qin Daoxian couldn't stand the constant stars. When everyone saw this scene, they were all stunned. A cultivator in the early stage of foundation building actually pressed the zombies in the late stage of Zifu to fight. Who can believe it? Although everyone can see it. With Sun Fu's strength, as long as Qin Daoxian is caught, Qin Daoxian will be killed on the spot. But Sun Fu just couldn't do it. The power of Qin Daoxian's flying sword can already break Sun Fu's defense. If he ignores it and is broken by Qin Daoxian's sword, his strength will be greatly damaged in an instant. At that time, Sun Fu couldn't even stop Qin Daoxian's flying sword, and he who was already at a disadvantage would definitely lose. The goose yellow gauze female cultivator who was watching the battle looked at Qin Daoxian in horror, looked at Fairy Qi Yao beside her and said, "Senior sister, this person is too enchanting." In the early stage of foundation building, he pressed against Zifu in the later stage. Fairy Qi Yao thought for a while, then shook her head and said, "Speaking of this late-stage Zifu zombie, its strength is far from that of a normal late-stage Zifu cultivator. If it is said that this Zhangzhou sword cultivator is using 1 point of strength to exert great power, then this Zifu zombie is to use 10 points of power to exert 2 or 3 points of power. The gap is too big." Fairy Qi Yao shook her head. Zhou Mubai looked at the two who were fighting in the void, and his face was full of shock. Because he found that Qin Daoxian seemed to have slightly surpassed his sword cultivator on the 3rd floor of the Purple Mansion in terms of attainments in swordsmanship. With his 3rd-layer foundation building cultivation, he surpassed him, a 3rd-layer sword cultivator in the Purple Mansion, in the realm of Kendo. Zhou Mubai understood what this meant. This means that Qin Daoxian's Kendo talent is far beyond his imagination. No wonder you choose to comprehend the sword intent of water travel. Zhou Mubai muttered. In the void, Sun Fu also seemed to see his own weakness. No, if it goes on like this, he will slowly kill him. It glanced at Qin Daoxian and once again slashed the flying sword with one claw. The broken claw on the left hand just grew back. In front of you. Qin Daoxian completely fell into a state of berserk regardless. The stars fell like meteors, one after another, endlessly. The 3 flying swords seemed to form an endless star shower. What? Sun Fu roared, protecting Dantian with his arms, and rushed towards Qin Daoxian. But before he could reach a few dozen feet, he was bombarded by Qin Daoxian's star shower and kept going backwards. Can't beat it. Everyone found out that Sun Fu, the late-stage zombie of my Zifu, really couldn't beat Qin Daoxian. Although the battle between the two was not a one-sided instant kill, the scale of victory was also firmly tilted towards Qin Daoxian. Off the field. The master of Jinhai Palace nodded slightly. Have you touched the 3rd level of sword intent, the realm of transforming stars? Boom. 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 The bombardment became more and more intensive, and in the end, Sun Fu's recovery speed gradually couldn't keep up with Qin Daoxian's attack speed. The star pierced Sun Fu's abdomen and pierced his corpse pill. Moment. Sun Furu was struck by lightning, and the sharp claws that had been recovering frantically stopped immediately. You lose. Qin Daoxian stopped and said, according to the agreement now, you should tell me the location of the old demon god Ju. Jia. Sun Fu lowered his head, looked at the huge gap in his abdomen and said with a smile, do you think my master will tell me the location? Fool, I lied to you. If I were you, I would choose to go back to Guang'an Mansion to see. Look at your family. Do you think that you are the only one who is wise in this world? What's the meaning? Sun Fu looked at him in horror. I mean, go to hell. The star light flashed again, completely piercing Sun Fu's corpse pill. The next moment, Sun Fu's body fell directly to the sea. The hall master of Jinhai Palace was silent when he saw this scene. In fact, he knew clearly in his heart that with the cautiousness of God Ju old demon, he would never tell him the location of the 2 corpse servants in the cave. But in order to completely eliminate this scorpion, he still had the thought of just in case, and the result was as expected. Senior. After killing Sun Fu, Qin Daoxian cupped his hands and said, this fellow still has a backer in Guang'an Mansion, and this junior must immediately return to help Guang'an Mansion. When everyone in Guang'an Mansion heard that Sun Mang was still in Guang'an Mansion, they felt a little worried. Although everyone knows. The zombies that Sun Fu stayed in Guang'an Mansion were at most a small number of elites, and could not be a large group of corpses, otherwise they would definitely not be able to hide the Cangzhou allied forces. But Sun Meng was a complete zombie of Zifu after all. If he said he was not worried at all, it would be a lie. The hall master of Jinhai Palace nodded and said, "Go." Yes. After speaking, Qin Daoxian turned around and wanted to leave. Fellow Taoist. Behind him, a female voice sounded. It was Fairy Qi Yao. The speed of the Spirit Void battleship is too slow. It is better to take my spirit boat, which is 10 times faster than the Spirit Void battleship. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian paused, then cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Fairy. You don't have to be polite, fellow Taoist." Fairy Qi Yao nodded and immediately stretched out her jade hand, and a 3-inch spirit boat appeared in her palm. Throw lightly. The spirit boat rose in the wind, and in a flash, it turned into an emerald green spirit boat that was nearly 100 feet long. Qin Daoxian was not polite, and with a flash of light, he flew to the spirit boat. Fairy Qi Yao and the female cultivator in goose yellow gauze followed closely. Next moment, the spirit boat soared into the sky and flew in the direction of Guang'an Mansion. Chapter 205. Southwest Waters of Wuxia. A spirit boat pierced through the sky as fast as a stream of light, and flashed away in the direction of Guang'an Mansion. On the spirit boat, Qin Daoxian cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Fairy, for your help. I don't know the names of the 2 fairies?" Qi Yao has not spoken yet. The female cultivator wearing a goose yellow gauze on the side said playfully, "She is my senior sister. Her name is Qi Yao. My name is Yue. What is your name, little Taoist?" "Don't be surprised, fellow Taoist. My junior sister has been practicing in the sect since she was a child. She is not deep in the world, and I look forward to fellow Taoist Haihan." Qi Yao glanced at Yue, and quickly apologized to Qin Daoxian. No problem, Qin Daoxian said with a smile. "How can I care about Fairy Yu's frank words?" After a pause he continued, "I am Qin Daoxian, a cultivator of the Qin family on Jianghu Island in Guang'an Prefecture, and I have seen 2 fairies." After formally meeting the 2 of them, Qi Yao nodded, "Fellow Taoist Qin, there is something I don't understand." "Fairy, please speak." Qin Daoxian stretched out his hand. Qi Yao hesitated and said, "According to what the late-stage corpse servant of Z Mansion said, the situation in Guang'an Mansion should be very critical at the moment." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian smiled. The immortal city of Guang'an Mansion is guarded by a 5th-order formation, and there are also cultivators of the Purple Mansion. There are only a few zombies in the Purple Mansion, and there is nothing they can do. As for my own family, I also have a backer at the bottom, plus there is a 4th-order defense formation to guard. I am not afraid of a few Zifu zombies. "I see." Qi Yao nodded. "Unfortunately, this time I tried my best, but I still couldn't completely eliminate the Xinjue Old Demon. If the Xinjue Old Demon will not be destroyed for a day, Wan Xinghai will be uneasy for a day." After speaking, he sighed again. Hear this. Qin Daoxian couldn't help feeling heavy. In the past he had only heard the name of Xinju Jinren in legends, but this time he had a direct face-to-face with him. Although he only briefly fought against the avatar of Xinju, the pressure on him was unprecedented. If it weren't for the golden scriptures in the Consciousness Sea and the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace, they would take action in time. Qin Daoxian was already dead at this moment, although he escaped from the hands of Xinju Ezhen. However, since Qin Daoxian broke free from Xinju Zhenren's famous supernatural power, Dingpa Xingguang, I am afraid that Xinju Zhenren has long been missed. It is not a good thing to be missed by such a sinister, cunning and powerful person. The fact that Xinju Ren is not eliminated in a day is also a huge threat to him. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help sinking into his own sea of consciousness. Know the sea. After the golden scripture devoured the soul-defying divine light released by Xinju Zhenren, there was a wonderful change. However, Qin Daoxian has been too late to check this change. "Friend Qin?" Seeing Qin Daoxian distracted, Fairy Qi Yao frowned and called softly. Qin Daoxian came back to his senses and cupped his hands. "Fairy, don't blame me, I seem to have thought of a way to get rid of the old demon god Jueju completely." "Any solution?" Fairy Qi Yao's eyes suddenly lit up, and she didn't care that Qin Daoxian was distracted just now. "My way is simple." Listening to Qin Daoxian's strategy, Fairy Qi Yao's beautiful eyes became brighter and brighter. "But, will the old demon Xinjue be fooled?" Maybe not, just bet once." Qin Daoxian's eyes were solemn. This time the old demon Xinjue lost his immortal avatar, and at the same time lost the ability to mass-produce the corpse servants of Zifu. Therefore, for the current Shinjue Old Demon, the corpse servant in the late period of Zifu is not a dispensable role, and it is entirely possible for him to take this risk. Okay. Fairy Chiyao nodded, then let's give it a try. Guang'an Prefecture. Twin Lakes Island. The Fourth Order defense formation that covers the entire island has long been opened. Outside the transparent light curtain constructed by the Fourth Order defense formation, Sun Mang brought 3 corpses of the early Purple Mansion and shouted outside the formation, "Are all of you Qin family cultivators a bunch of cowards? Don't hide if you have the ability. Come out and fight me." Boom. With that said, Sun Mang slammed a punch on the light curtain of the Fourth Order defense formation. But it poses no threat to the light curtain. If 10 late-stage Zifu corpses can still cause damage to the Fourth Order defense formation, just 1 late-stage Zifu plus 3 early-stage Zifu corpses cannot pose any threat to the Fourth Order defense formation. This was also the reason why Sun Mang was so angry. He didn't expect that a small family in Guang'an Prefecture, which was not well known, could actually set up a Fourth Order defensive formation. To know. If you want to arrange a Fourth Order defense formation, it means that there must be at least a Third Order spiritual vein on the island in front of you. Otherwise, it will not be able to support the operation of the Fourth Order defense formation. Inside the Fourth Order defense formation, Qin Xinhe took a group of monks of the Blessing Generation, and looked at Sun Mang, who was desperate outside the formation, and his face was ugly. This was the first time that the Qin family had been blocked by someone, and they did not dare to fight. In addition to the Qin family, a sturdy merman and a petite female merman stood in the air, standing beside everyone. Luo Xiyun glanced at Qin Xinhe, who had an ugly face, and the group of monks who were gnashing their teeth and wishing to tear Sun Mang apart, and said in a deep voice, "Why don't I go out and meet him, Herd?" Qin Xinhe looked at Luo Xiyun and shook his head. "Patriarch Luo doesn't have to be like this. We only have 1 of your Zifu battle strength and the other side has 4, it's too dangerous." Out of defense. The more Sun Mang scolded, the more unpleasant it sounded, and took the cultivators from other islands in the west defense area of Guang'an Mansion, killing them one by one in order to stimulate the cultivators of the Chen family. These bastards. Qin Fuxing tightened the flying sword in his hand, his eyes red. Although he is a sword cultivator, he only has the 9th level of Qi refining. Now rush out, in addition to courting death, there is no second possibility. Let's go, don't look. Qin Xinhe waved his hand. But the old patriarch, those monks. Hearing this, Qin Xinhe glanced at the cultivator who was screaming outside the defense formation, and closed his eyes in pain and said, "In the end, it's their fault. My Qin family persuaded them to move out of the clan and go to Guanhai. Xianqing, since they are unwilling, they should pay for this decision today." Having said that, but seeing the cultivators die tragically in front of him, Qin Xinhe was still trembling with anger. Go. Qin Xinhe was ruthless and immediately prepared to fly away, no longer looking at the tragic situation in front of him. The mermen, headed by Luo Xiyuan and Luo Li, did not have much psychological change when they saw the scene in front of them. Compared with the racial slaughter in the underwater world, the blood in front of him is not even a family. That is to say, the monks of the Fuzi generation who have not been deeply involved in the world and have not been baptized by war are a little frightened. And Qin Xinhe, a cultivator who has been on the battlefield of Izumo, is at most angry and not afraid. But watch carefully. There are still some differences among the cultivators of the Chen family. There is a group of monks of the Blessing generation who are particularly calm. It seems that the tragic situation that occurs outside the defense formation is commonplace, and there is no fear other than anger. There are not many monks in this batch of Blessing characters, but they are obviously different from other monks in the Blessing generation. Pfft. A Qi refining cultivator's neck was twisted a little by Sun Mang, and finally he pulled it out sharply, pulling his spine out of the cultivator's body. Immediately blood spurted out. Sun Mang held the corpse in one hand and the head connected to the spine in the other. He licked the blood spattered on the corner of his mouth, his pale golden pupils were full of bloodthirsty and cruelty. These cultivators of the Chen family can really bear it. Sun Mang murmured, "Brother, I don't know if things are going well on your side." For some reason, the unhappiness of this trip made Sun Mang's heart full of haze, and he had a bad premonition. Chen's dog, eh? As if feeling something, Sun Mang just turned around, and saw a starlight transformed by a flying sword hitting its body, directly smashing his body onto the light curtain of the Fourth Order defense formation, and then bounced fiercely. Open. Under such a violent attack, the corpse in his hand also fell directly into the sea, dyeing the sea red. Qin Dao Xian. Sun Mang clutched his wounded chest, black air gushing out from the wound, frantically repairing its wounded body. In a blink, the gap in the chest was repaired as before. So close. Although Sun Mang's face was full of anger, he was shocked. If he hadn't evaded in time just now, it was only a short while before that the starlight transformed by the flying sword would have penetrated his dantian and damaged his corpse pill. For zombies, the corpse is a more critical location than the head. When it reaches the late stage of Zifu, the head of the zombie is destroyed, and the recovery is not much different from the body, but if the corpse pill is damaged, the zombie will lose the ability to restore the body and lose the source of strength. This is also the reason why Sun Fu and Qin Daoxian fought so hard to protect the position of dantian. 4 monks who cannot break their defenses. Dantian position is naturally not a weakness. But for Qin Daoxian who can break their defenses, the dantian position is the biggest weakness of zombies. Therefore, every time he attacked he was also directed at Sun Mang's dantian. In the face of Sun Mang's clamor, Qin Daoxian ignored it. After the battle with Sun Fu, he already had a clearer judgment on his own strength. In terms of group attacks on low-level cultivators, he is probably more deterrent than Jindan cultivators. In terms of one-on-one, his strength is only 1 point stronger than the zombies in the late Zifu. If it is placed in the cultivator, it is probably slightly stronger than the ordinary middle-stage cultivator of Zifu, but it should be no better than the ordinary late-stage cultivator of Zifu. Inside the defensive formation, just as Qin Xinhe was about to fly away, he heard the exclamations of everyone. He turned his head and saw a scene that surprised him. Outside the formation, a familiar figure was beating Sun Mang. The person in front of him is not Qin Daoxian, and who is he? Young Patriarch. It's the young Patriarch. It's the young Patriarch. It's really the young Patriarch. Great. Inside the formation, the cultivator Qin Jiafu and the cultivator Dao were all rejoicing and excited. For the Qin family cultivators, Qin Daoxian is the source of their confidence and confidence. This kind of prestige is something that no cultivator of any family or sect has ever had. The Qin family cultivator is no longer simply in awe of Qin Daoxian, but has a taste of fanatical worship. At this point, whether it is a monk of the Taoist generation or a monk of the Blessing generation, they are all the same. Seeing Qin Daoxian, Qin Xinhe stopped immediately. He knew that Sun Mang was dead. It is obvious that Qin Daoxian's cultivation base is only at the foundation stage, but he believes that Qin Daoxian can definitely solve this opponent. Seeing this scene, Luo Shiyuan immediately stepped forward and flew out of the formation, outside the defensive array. Except for Qin Daoxian, who was beating Sun Mang violently, the remaining 3 zombies in the early stage of Zifu were directly killed by Fairy Qi Yao with 1 sword. After killing 3 zombies in the early stage of Zifu, Qi Yao and Yue stood in the void, lining up for Qin Daoxian. Luo Shiyuan flew out of the battle, and was embarrassed to find that he had no opponents. He wanted to help Qin Daoxian, but Qin Daoxian didn't seem to want him to help, which made him feel at a loss. Luo Shiyuan looked at Qin Daoxian, who was constantly suppressing Sun Mang in the distance, and a huge wave was set off in his heart. How long has it been? He still remembered that when he met Qin Daoxian more than 10 years ago, he could crush him with 1 finger. But more than 10 years later, he no longer has any confidence that he can win against the opponent. This rate of progress. Luo Shiyuan only felt a chill behind him, but then there was another burst of happiness. He was fortunate that when he first met Qin Daoxian, he did not choose to oppress him rudely, and he was even more fortunate that he decisively became a vassal of the Qin family before the rise of the Qin family. In addition, this time he has done a good job in protecting Jianghu Island. No matter what, the future of the Mare people will be extremely bright. After all, Wanxinghai is the Wanxinghai of the human race. If you want to survive in the Wanxinghai, whether it is a merman or other aliens, you must learn to find a human backer. Obviously, for the merman, the Qin family is a good human backer. The mermaid? Watching the fight. A soft voice sounded in Luo Ziyuan's ear. It was Qi Yao. Although she couldn't recognize the female cultivator in front of her, her strength was obviously much more terrifying than Qin Daoxian. This can be seen from the fact that the opponent killed 3 corpse servants in the early period of Zifu with 1 sword. She is also a swordsman. A sword cultivator with a complete cultivation base in Zifu. Luo Shiyuan doubted whether he could block the opponent's sword. Therefore, Luo Shiyuan hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Fairy has good eyesight, and it is the subordinate race of the Qin family, the Mare people." Heard. Qi Yao nodded. I have read from the ancient books in the sect that there was a branch of the ancient human race that escaped to the underwater world, and later evolved into many races, and your mere people seem to be one of them. Luo Shiyuan nodded. What the fairy said is good. Hearing the word Zhongniai, Luo Shiyuan was shocked. The other party is from the Qinyuan sword sect. Immediately his attitude became more humble. A disciple of Qinyuan sword sect and also a sword cultivator, this must be a direct disciple of Qinyuan sword sect. The future of this kind of person is difficult to estimate. As long as he does not fall, he will basically become the top of the Qinyuan sword sect in the future. Unexpectedly, now the Lord can actually get involved with such a character. Luo Shiyuan secretly said. Senior sister, he is going to win. You on the side smiled. Qi Yao turned her head and looked at the battlefield where Qin Daoxian and Sun Meng were fighting. Impossible. Impossible. It's only been a few years, how can you become so strong? I don't believe it, I don't believe it. Sun Meng looked like a madman, his fangs were exposed and the corpse aura filled the air, which was disgusting. The starlight kept falling, tearing up Sun Meng's recovering body bit by bit. In the end, Sun Meng's corpse pill was hit by Qin Daoxuan's flying sword. Sun Meng's eyes bulged and his body was completely stiff. Ho dash, he lowered his head and glanced at the flying sword that pierced his dantian, then raised his head with difficulty and looked at Qin Daoxian. Not finished. Qin Daoxian pulled out the flying sword, and Sun Meng's body fell directly to the sea, sinking toward the bottom of the sea. After Sun Meng was dealt with, Qin Daoxian took back his flying sword and flew towards the crowd with a flash of light. Frenchin, how is it? A gentle voice sounded in Qin Daoxuan's sea of consciousness. It was Fairy Qi Yao's voice. Qin Daoxian looked at her and nodded slightly to her. Chapter 206. With the timely rescue of Qin Daoxian. The turmoil of the Zifu zombies' surprise attack on Jianghu Island and Guanhai Xianqing finally subsided. The next day. View Haixinqing. Look at the endless crowds and bustling street scenes in Xianqing. Fairy Qi Yao turned her head to Qin Daoxian and said, Friend Qin Dao, I've been bothering you for a few days. Fairy is polite, I haven't thanked the fairy for your help, why bother to talk about it? Qin Daoxian smiled and cupped his hands. Conversation room. Soon, a vast spiritual mansion appeared in front of the three of them. This spiritual mansion is where I practiced in this fairy city, so I have wronged the two fairies to rest here for a few days. I can't see it, your environment here is okay. Yue swept her consciousness, saw the beautiful environment in Lingfu and said with a smile. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian smiled slightly. In order to build this spiritual mansion, the Qin family spent nearly 1 million spiritual stones before and after. There are not only a few main spiritual eyes of the third-order spiritual veins, but also various alchemy rooms, talisman rooms, special retreat rooms, etc. Wait, it has everything. Besides, a variety of ornamental gardens, Linghu and other artificial forest gardens have also been built, and various cherished ornamental spiritual animals and spiritual fish have been raised, so that the owner of this Lingfu can relax after practice. Although this spiritual mansion cannot be compared with Fairy Qi Yao's Dongtian Immortal Mansion, it can be regarded as a top-level cultivation place among the various clans in Guang'an Mansion. Qin Daoxian built this Lingfu not for his own cultivation but for the Qin clan, to have a place to build a foundation and even break through the Zifu. Well known. The monks need the support of the second-order spiritual veins to build the foundation, and they need the support of the third-order spiritual veins to break through to the Purple Palace. The Qin family only has 2 third-order spiritual veins on Jianghu Island and Sequoia Island, so naturally they should make full use of them. Not surprisingly. In the next 10 years, a large number of foundation-building cultivators will emerge from the Qin family. This Lingfu is not so much the place of Qin Daoxuan's practice, but one of the dojos where the cultivators of the Qin family built their foundations. Qin Daochu and Qin Dalian successfully built their foundations here. The three entered the Lingfu. After some introduction, Qin Daoxian handed over the jade card that controlled the Spirit Palace formation to Fairy Qi Yao, and then handed over to the two of them. Since that's the case, I won't disturb the cultivation of the two fairies, farewell. Fairy Qi Yao smiled and nodded. Friend Qin, walk slowly. Yue smiled and said, we won't give you away. Qin Daoxian smiled slightly, then disappeared together and disappeared in front of the two of them. Watching Qin Daoxian leave, Yue looked at Fairy Qi Yao slyly and said with a sly tone, Senior sister, I find that you seem to be too polite to this fellow Daoist Qin, shouldn't you? He's handsome, talented and has self-discipline. Isn't it normal that I have a good impression of him? Fairy Chi Yao looked at Yue strangely. I wanted to make fun of senior sister, but I didn't expect Fairy Chi Yao to push her back so indifferently. Yue sat on the wax instead. Senior sister, you don't really like this person, do you? If you have a good feeling in your heart, you just fall in love with each other, and do you want to become a Taoist partner? Chi Yaoyu tapped Yu's white and smooth forehead, smiled and shook her head. You? Oh, stop nodding, I'm not a child anymore. Yue said angrily. Out of Lingfu. Qin Daoxian flew straight toward Shuanghu Island. Less than half a cup of tea. Qin Daoxian rushed back to Shuanghu Island. Twin Lakes Island Port. Qin Xinhe was taking the cultivators of the Qin family's Dao and Fu characters to thank the mermaid tribe headed by Luo Shuyuan and Luo Li. Patriarch Luo, I Qin Zheyong will always remember the kindness of this helping hand in my heart. Qin Xinhe said solemnly. Old Patriarch Qin is polite, Luo Mao is ashamed to be worthy. Luo Shuyuan kept his attitude low. My merman is a subordinate race of the Qin family. When a foreign enemy attacks the Qin family, it is to attack my mere people. How can my mere people stand by? Hear this. Qin Xinhe couldn't help but feel better about the merman. Although Sun Mang brought 3 corpse servants in the early period of Zifu this time, it was not enough to pose a threat to the Fourth Order defense formation. But in case Sun Mang brought some treasures such as breaking beads, the ending would be hard to say. The existence of the merman is the last insurance that Qin Daoxian found for the Qin family. With Luo Shuyuan, the head of the merman clan, and a group of mere people in the late foundation building stage of the merman clan, Sun Mang and the other 4 Zifu wanted to destroy the Qin family, which was a complete nonsense. Of course, if things really had to develop to that point, whether it was the mermaid or the Qin family, it would definitely hurt their vitality. Low-level monks rely on numbers to resist high-level monks. Although it can work, it will definitely pay a heavy price. Qin Xinhe and Luo Shuyuan were talking. A ray of light flew over from far and near. It was Qin Daoxian. Lord. Seeing Qin Daoxian, Luo Shuyuan, the patriarch of the merman clan, immediately bowed and gave a very respectful attitude. Qin Daoxian nodded, stretched out his hand to support the road. Patriarch Luo, thank you the merman for solving the siege of my Qin family this time. My lord is too kind. Facing Qin Daoxian, Luo Ziyuan's pressure was much greater. Whether it was the opponent's terrifying talent or his strength, Luo Shuyuan had to take it seriously. Okay, I won't say more, Qin Daoxian pondered for a moment and said, since your mere people are loyal to my Qin family will not be mean and unkind. I know that your mere people are detained by the Zhou family on Lingbei Island, a large number of people, right? That's true. Luo Shuyuan faintly knew what Qin Daoxian was going to say, and immediately his tone of excitement trembled slightly. I can help you get these clansmen back. Is the Lord's statement true? Luo Shuyuan flew forward excitedly, grabbed Qin Daoxian's arm, and his eyes were slightly red. Naturally. Qin Daoxian nodded. Well? Luo Shuyuan was a little incoherent with excitement. He immediately tried to kneel down and kowtow to Qin Daoxian, but Qin Daoxian grabbed him. Patriarch Luo doesn't have to do this. Looking at Luo Shuyuan who was so excited, Qin Daoxian was filled with emotion. Once upon a time. The first time he went to the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture, he saw a large group of low-level monsters assembled by the mermen, and they wanted to attack the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture. Its purpose is to rescue the clansmen detained on Lingbei Island. However, the strength of the Zhou family was too strong. The mercenary group of monsters assembled by using the power of the whole family could not stop the Zhou family cultivators' round of sword formations, and they were defeated and collapsed by the strangulation. So in the end, the mere people had to make a decision to migrate. On the side, Luo Li, who had not spoken all the time, was also a little overwhelmed with small hands, looked at Qin Daoxian and said gratefully, "Thank you." Qin Daoxian smiled and nodded at her. Luo Li's little hands clenched even tighter. Thanks to the mere people again and again. Qin Daoxian and Qin Xinhe watched as the merman returned to the sea and disappeared in front of them. That little girl from the merman race looking at your eyes. What's up? Qin Daoxian turned his head suspiciously. Nothing. Qin Xinhe glanced at the sea, smiled and shook his head. Let's go home. Well, go home. Glancing at the golden sea in the sunset, Qin Daoxian said with a smile. About half a stick of incense. The sea hundreds of miles away from Shuanghu Island. A petite figure emerged from the sea, and then, a strong figure appeared beside the petite figure. Luo Li stared in the direction of Shuanghu Island, not knowing what was going on in her little head. Seeing her appearance, Luo Xiun sighed, "Silly child, don't look at it." Luo Li raised her little head, glanced at her father and then nodded with a smile, but there was a little girl's grief in this smile. Watching my father resubmerged in the sea. Luo Li finally glanced in the direction of Jianghu Island, sighed faintly and dived into the sea again. The other side. Qin Daoxian returned to Lingfu on Jianghu Island. After everything is done. Without further ado, he lay directly on the bed made by Wen Yu and slept soundly. This line. He was really tired, and in Cangzhou Xianqing he became the absolute main force on the battlefield with a mere foundation-building cultivation base. For this reason, it attracted the attention of Xinjue Jinren, and was almost killed by Xinjue Jinren. Afterwards, he fought for hundreds of thousands of miles, returned to Jianghu Island in Guang'an Prefecture, and relieved the family siege. Keep fighting down. Qin Daoxian was exhausted. Slept a whole day and night. Qin Daoxian woke up full of energy. The first thing when he woke up, Qin Daoxian did not deal with the accumulated family affairs, but observed the changes in the Sea of Knowledge. Ever since the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, in the Sea of Knowledge swallowed up the divine light shot by Xinjue Jinren, this golden scripture has undergone some changes. But Qin Daoxian was too late to check. At this moment, Qin Daoxian, who was busy with everything, finally had the opportunity to check this change. Sinking consciousness into the Sea of Consciousness space. The center of the Sea of Knowledge. The golden scriptures were suppressed in the Sea of Knowledge. In the depths of the Sea of Knowledge, clusters of light flickered and emerged in the Sea of Knowledge, like stars in the sky. Around the golden scriptures, a full 27 stardust kept spinning and chasing, but it didn't change much from before. Qin Daoxian focused his consciousness on the golden scriptures themselves. Finally he found a new change. Originally, this golden scripture only recorded an unknown scripture called Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic. But now, below this golden scripture, another looming new content is recorded. Qin Daoxian had not yet had time to check. The stardust that revolved directly around the golden scriptures flew towards the golden scriptures one by one. Suddenly, the looming new content solidified. After that, these contents turned into a light group and flew to the depths of Qin Daoxian's Sea of Consciousness. This? Qin Daoxian looked at the scene in front of him in shock. This was the first change in the golden scriptures after he got the golden scriptures. Once upon a time, this golden scripture was like a motionless dead object, sitting in the center of his Sea of Consciousness. But this time the golden scripture itself has changed. This made Qin Daoxian anxious, and at the same time, he couldn't help but have more expectations in his heart. The ability of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic to store comprehension has made Qin Daoxian soar on the road of cultivation, leaving those monks with talent and evil spirits far behind. But this is just an unknown scripture that comes with the golden scriptures. Now that the golden scripture itself has changed, how can Qin Daoxian not be surprised? With anticipation, he plunged his consciousness into the light group released by the golden scriptures. Next second, countless information poured into Qin Daoxian's Sea of Consciousness, almost bursting his Sea of Consciousness. I do not know how long it has been. Qin Daoxian was relieved with a splitting headache. He hadn't felt this painful feeling for a long time. When accepting several inheritances such as Qianyuan Sword Sutra, although his head was slightly swollen, it was far less terrifying. This magic. Qin Daoxian just thought about it for a moment, and suddenly a splitting headache hit him again. He knew that this was a phenomenon that occurred after the loss of consciousness was severe. Seeing this, he did not dare to delay. He immediately recited the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic silently. This is also the ability of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, at the beginning, to restore consciousness. So, the time for a stick of incense has passed. Qin Daoxian's lost consciousness was completely recovered after reciting the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, which was extremely miraculous. After the consciousness is restored, Qin Daoxian checked this magical power again. This magical power is nothing else. It is the unique magical power that Xinjue Jinren obtained from the inheritance of immortals, Dingxin Xinguang. In detail, the most magical part of this divine light is not its means of attack. The secret technique of attacking divine consciousness is rare in Wangxinghai, but it is not unique. Even the secret techniques of divine consciousness defense can be found in Qianyuan Jianzhong. If the soul-fixing divine light is only a secret technique of this level, although it is precious, it will not make Xinjue Jinren so arrogant. The most amazing thing about this soul-setting divine light lies in its cultivation method. Well known. Divine consciousness exists in the Sea of Consciousness, which is intangible and intangible, But the immortal monarch who created this kind of soul-fixing divine light has found another way to forge the consciousness into a tangible sea of light. The first stage of soul divine light is to open up the sea of divine light within the sea of consciousness. After that, he began to refine his divine sense and expand the sea of divine light. As the sea of divine light grows, it will continue to open up the sea of consciousness and enhance divine consciousness. In this way, the bigger the sea of divine light, the wider the sea of consciousness, and the stronger the consciousness. And the stronger the consciousness, the bigger the sea of divine light and a virtuous circle. Originally, the expansion of the sea of knowledge could only be expanded by the improvement of the cultivator's cultivation. But with the magical power of soul divine light, the expansion of the sea of consciousness is no longer limited to the cultivation of monks. In theory, even if the cultivator only has the chi-refining stage, his consciousness can be comparable to or even higher than that of the cultivator of the Purple House. Because this magical power has been cultivated all the time, there is no end at all, it is a process of continuous expansion. It wants to build a bridge called the Sea of Divine Light between the Sea of Consciousness and the invisible and intangible Divine Consciousness. Of course, this magical power sounds infinitely powerful. It seems that in the late stage of cultivation, the strength of spiritual consciousness is unmatched, and there is no uncertainty in the soul and light. In fact, it has an inherent limitation. That is the consumption of divine consciousness itself in the process of refining divine consciousness and expanding the sea of divine light. Well known. After the consciousness is consumed, it will take a long time to recover, unless the monk has a special elixir to restore the consciousness. Otherwise, relying on the cultivator himself, whether or not the consciousness can be recovered in 10 days is a matter of two things. As such, if a cultivator wants to cultivate this powerful magical power, he is faced with a problem, and it is difficult to restore his consciousness. This is also the reason why Shinjua Jinren frantically looted and restored spiritual consciousness like elixir. Chapter 207. Call. After reading the first training requirement of Dying Soul Divine Light, Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief, and his eyes showed excitement. Restoring consciousness is extremely difficult for other monks, but for him, isn't it easy? Since Qin Daoxian obtained the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, he has developed a total of 3 functions: restoring consciousness, storing understanding, and preaching. For Qin Daoxian, the most important function among the 3 functions is naturally to store comprehension, followed by preaching, and the original function of restoring consciousness in the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic is the most useless. Under normal circumstances, unless it is a long period of alchemy, Qin Daoxian consumes very little consciousness, and he will not use the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic to restore the function of consciousness at all. In his impression, the time when he used this function the most was in the years when he first came into contact with the inheritance of the family's weapon refining. Because at that time, the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic did not have the function of storing understanding. Qin Daoxian can only learn and practice on his own when he learns to refine tools. In addition, his consciousness is weak, so he often needs to use the function of restoring consciousness. And now, Qin Daoxian not only has the strength of spiritual consciousness comparable to the cultivator of Zifu, but also has the ability to store his understanding in the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic. At this time, the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, to restore the function of consciousness, seems quite tasteless. At least compared with its other 2 functions, this function is a bit tasteless. Qin Daoxian himself has not used this function for a long time. If it wasn't for the inheritance of Ding Soul Divine Light this time, the consumption of divine consciousness was too great, and Qin Daoxian would have forgotten this function of Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic. But now, the appearance of Dingshin Xingguang will undoubtedly make the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic function to restore consciousness once again rejuvenated. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't wait to comprehend the magical powers passed down by the immortals of the upper realm. Time passed little by little with Qin Daoxian's comprehension. Strictly speaking, the magical power of soul divine light does not belong to the category of magic. Generally speaking, spells and exercises are not the same. For monks, whether it is magic or swordsmanship, they are all outsiders. However, the magical power of Ding Soul Divine Light is a magical power that combines an outsider's way and one's own way. It can not only expand the divine consciousness by expanding the sea of divine light, but also attack the enemy with the divine light in the sea of divine light. No wonder Shinjua Jinren can rely on it to slay the Yuanying Jinjuan with the Jindan cultivation base. It is really powerful. 3 full days. After reading the magical power of Ding Soul Divine Light completely, Qin Daoxian opened his eyes and muttered. In theory, the power of this magical power has no upper limit. If the real person of Xinjue was not restricted by the restoration of divine consciousness, he might really be able to overthrow the Qinyuan sword sect with this magical power. Think of this. Qin Daoxian's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. He knew that when this magical power fell into his hands, the power was 10 times or even 100 times stronger than when it fell into the hands of Xinju. Because it is impossible for Qin Juezhen to have such good cultivation conditions, he can use the Hongming Enlightenment Classic to continuously restore his consciousness. It's just that although the power of Ding Soul Divine Light is strong, it is not easy to get started. Qin Daoxian frowned. According to the records of this magical power, if you want to get started, you need a little source of divine light. The source of divine light of Xinjue Jinren comes from the inheritance of the immortals in the upper realm. Where will I get this? What about the source of divine light? God is real. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian's eyes became firm. In the end, we have to find the real God. The so-called source of divine light means that the last person who cultivated the sea of divine light intercepted a bit of the source from the sea of divine light to help the latecomers open up the sea of divine light. If not, it would be 100 times more difficult for monks to open up the sea of divine light. Even the immortal monarch of the upper realm who created this magical power took tens of thousands of years to successfully open up the sea of divine light. It is conceivable that this magical power has a high threshold for cultivation. Perhaps for immortals, 10,000 years is at the flick of a finger. But for a young cultivator like him at the foundation building stage, if it takes him 10,000 years to open up the sea of divine light, Qin Daoxian would rather give up cultivating this magical power temporarily. So, the hope of cultivating this magical power lies in the real person Xinjue or the immortal corpse. Thinking of the immortal corpse clone suppressed by the hall master of Jinhai Palace, Qin Daoxian's mind immediately became active. Xinjue Jinren can enter the soul-defining divine light so quickly, he must have obtained the source of divine light left by the immortals. The source of divine light exists in the sea of divine light, in other words, it exists in the sea of consciousness where the corpse is damaged. Immortals and immortal monks are completely different. After the monk becomes immortal, he will reshape the immortal body. This reshaped immortal body is called the pure yang immortal body, also called the immortal body. The so-called immortality. Not only does the body not rot, but after the death of the immortal, the damaged sea of consciousness will also be stored in the immortal corpse and will not dissipate immediately. In fact, it is extremely difficult to kill a person who has become an immortal. Even if the enemy has the same cultivation base, it is easy to defeat an immortal, but it is extremely difficult to kill an immortal. So, my hope of cultivating this magical power is on you. Qin Daoxian raised his head, his eyes seemed to pass through the secret room of retreat, through the deep sea, and looked at the underwater world of Wangxinghai. Wangxinghai underwater world. A broken body slowly sank into the sea. If you look closely, you will find that this corpse is blue and purple, not like a human corpse. This corpse is not Sun Mang, and who is it? While the corpse sank to the bottom of the sea, there were constantly monsters that were not in the rank, pounced on the corpse and bitten frantically. Even if it sinks to the bottom of the sea, these insane monsters didn't let go, biting desperately, as if its corpse had something to attract them. Twilight. This corpse suddenly opened its eyes, and in the pale golden eyes, brutality and bloodthirsty burst out. Sun Mang opened his mouth slightly, his sharp fangs bared. At the same time there was a black corpse aura that spewed out of its mouth. These corpse auras are very terrifying. As soon as they come into contact with the group of monsters that are biting around them, these monsters are like leaking balloons. It's dangerous, it's almost. After absorbing the blood of these monsters, Sun Mang finally regained his vitality. It slowly stood up straight, looked at the surrounding environment, and learned that this is the Wangxinghai underwater world. Identify a direction and fly towards the east. It is too weak now, and it has to find some food to replenish and recover. And in the Wangxinghai underwater world, is there any better food than the horde of monsters? With its strength, as long as it doesn't provoke those ethnic groups with monsters above the 3rd rank, there will be no danger at all. So, under Sun Mang's careful slaughter, 3 groups of monsters in a row disappeared forever in the underwater world of Wangxinghai. It's just that this kind of killing is commonplace in the Wangxinghai underwater world. No monster group cares. In addition, the monster beast tribes chosen by Sun Mang were all small tribes with low intelligence, so no one paid any attention. After devouring 3 groups of monsters in a row, Sun Meng finally recovered from his injuries. Although Danshan's corpse pill is a little bleak, it does not affect its strength. Qin Daoxian. Thinking of Qin Daoxian who almost killed it, Sun Meng's eyes were full of resentment. But let it go to Qin Daoxian's trouble again, Sun Meng didn't dare. Although he doesn't want to admit it, Qin Daoxian's strength has indeed surpassed it. And with the passage of time, Qin Daoxian's strength will only get stronger and stronger, and his strength, if there is no chance against the sky, will not be able to improve. Sun Meng, who is a zombie, knows this in his heart. The calamity of zombies is far more terrifying than that of human cultivators. With its strength, even if it breaks through to the golden elixir stage, it will be smashed into ashes by lightning tribulation. In the future, when it encounters Qin Daoxian again, there will only be a dead end. Like the good luck of this catastrophe, it cannot be encountered again. Think of this. Sun Meng felt extremely sad in his heart. Originally, as a high-spirited foundation-building cultivator, in order to find the treasures of Xinjue Immortal Mansion, he was transformed into a corpse servant by the real person of Xinjue for his driving. Up to now, the eldest brother who has always been regarded as relying on has died, and he is alone in the world without being a ghost or a ghost. Every time you think about it, Sun Meng had the idea of committing suicide. Because it knows that once the news of its existence leaks, it will be endlessly hunted down by Zhangzhou cultivators and even Qianyuan Jianzhong. With its strength, it cannot escape these pursuits at all. Rather than being hunted down to death like a bereaved dog, it would be better to kill oneself sooner rather than living alone in pain. Anyway, it's just an outcast. Why, if you fail at this point, you want to commit suicide? Just as he was thinking of committing suicide, a voice sounded in Sun Meng's ear. Owner. Sun Meng was very familiar with this voice. It was the real god who turned it into a zombie. As the corpse servant of Xin Juezhen, Sun Meng could not have the slightest dissatisfaction with Xin Juezhen as the master, but he was full of respect for him in his heart. This is also the evil of the corpse servant. It is clearly made into such a ghost by others, but he respects the person who poisoned it from the bottom of his heart, and will not have any intention of resisting. Sun Meng looked around. In front of it, a vortex formed and then a space portal was slowly opened. This scene is almost the same as when the 2 Sun brothers were investigating Xinjue Immortal Mansion. Sun Meng stepped into the Immortal Mansion without hesitation. Immediately afterwards, the portal of the Immortal Mansion was closed, and the seabed returned to calm again as if nothing had happened. Zhangzhou Xianqing. In Qin Daoxian's spirit palace. Fairy Qi Yao, who was walking in the garden of the mansion, paused. Beside her, Yue saw Qi Yao's face serious, raised her head and said, "Senior sister, what's wrong?" Fairy Qi Yao said solemnly, "My sense has disappeared." "You mean?" Fairy Yu's beautiful eyes were full of surprises. "God, you old demon is hooked?" "Should be." Fairy Qi Yao nodded, then hesitated. "I'll inform Uncle Master. You go to inform fellow Taoist Chen." Hearing this, Yue pouted. "Why inform him? Anyway, this idea was thought up by Dao Yu Qin, and he should be informed about it." Fairy Qi Yao is serious. "Okay, I know." Yue also knew that the matter was urgent, and immediately flew away in the direction of Jianghu Island. So, Qin Daoxian, who was retreating in the secret room, sensed Yu's breath and got up and went out of the closed room. Escaped together. Flying out of the mountain protection formation on Jianghu Island, he cupped his hands towards Yue and said, "Fairy Yue, I don't know what instructions you have. God, you old demon is hooked." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian's eyes flashed with ecstasy. After half a cup of tea, Zhangzhou Xianqing Lingfu, Qin Daoxian, Fairy Qi Yao, and Fairy Yue waited respectfully in the garden. I saw a ripple in the space in front of the 3 of them. A young Taoist walked out first, and behind the young Taoist was an old man with white hair. Demonic. When Qin Daoxian saw the old man's first glance, the golden scriptures in the consciousness sea trembled. Danger. Extremely dangerous. You must know that when encountering the immortal corpse clone of Xinju, the golden scriptures in the sea of knowledge have never warned so madly. Obviously, the strength of the old man in front of him is stronger than that of the immortal corpse clone of Xinju. 5th order monster. I want to be the metamorphosis stage monster of the Yuan Ing Xinjuan of the human race. I've seen Uncle Master. When Fairy Qi Yao and Fairy Yue saw the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace, they immediately saluted each other with respectful expressions on their pretty faces. But he turned a blind eye to the transformation period monster beside him. I have seen the Lord of Jinhai Palace. Qin Daoxian also bowed immediately. Then he looked at the big monster in the transformation period behind the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace, hesitated for a moment, or bowed his hands and said, "I have seen the senior." The gray-haired old man heard this. He raised his eyes slightly and showed a kind smile to Qin Daoxian. "Okay, there's no need to salute beasts." The Hall Master of Jinhai Hall waved his hand at will, and after speaking he kicked the old man behind him at will and said, "Old guy, hurry up, help me to see where is the beast of Shinjue old demon hiding?" "Yes, Hall Master." The old man seemed to be terrified of the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace. Being scolded by him at will, he did not dare to resist at all. Next moment, the old man's body began to change rapidly, and he saw that his body continued to expand. Soon, a 3-foot-long toad appeared in front of everyone. It is the patriarch of the Kongmingchen clan. The Kongmingchen clan is very good at distinguishing changes in space. Only a trace of its own breath can lock the position of the cave space. Qin Daoxian knew the sea and Fairy Qi Yao's explanation sounded. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian suddenly said, "So it is, the saliva you asked me to smear on the flying sword must be it?" "Exactly." Fairy Qi Yao nodded. Between the two talking, the eyes of this empty toad changed from green to white, and there were all kinds of mysterious flows in between. Qin Daoxian felt dizzy after only one glance. "Boy, don't look around." The voice of the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace rang in his sea of consciousness, and then his head cleared slightly. Qin Daoxian didn't dare to look any further, and immediately turned his head away. About half a stick of incense time. The white in the eyes of this empty toad faded and turned green again, and its body slowly returned to the appearance of an old man. "The lord of the palace," the old man said slowly, "my subordinates have already found out the location of the old demon Shinjue." Heard. Everyone's eyes lit up slightly. The Hall Master of Jinhai Palace laughed even more. "Not bad, the racial talent of your Kongmingchen clan is really good. Thank you for the praise from the Hall Master." Hearing this, the white-haired old man stooped slightly, and his face immediately showed a flattered expression. Seeing his well-behaved appearance, the Master of Jinhai Palace smiled slightly and said, "Let's go, let's take you to visit the immortal mansion built by the immortals of the upper realm." Chapter 208. Southwest Waters of Wanhaihai. An unknown underwater world. There was a ripple in the space and then, a group of people came out from the crack in the space. The person at the head is the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace, Qin Zhan. Behind. After Qin Daoxian stepped out of the space crack, he felt dizzy and nauseated. Beside him, a soft touch came from his arm. "Are you okay?" Smelling a fragrant scent, Qin Daoxian stood firm, turned his head, and saw the beautiful woman beside him. It was Fairy Qi Yao who supported him. "Thank you, Fairy, it's okay to be here." After slowing down, Qin Daoxian bowed his hands and said gratefully. Seeing that Qin Daoxian was okay, Fairy Qi Yao let go of her hand and explained softly, "The first long-distance teleportation will always feel uncomfortable. Gradually weaken and disappear." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian nodded, "Thank you, Fairy, for your suggestion." Front. The Hall Master of Jinhai Palace was full of energy, looked around for a while and turned to the white-haired old man beside him. "Old guy, is this?" "Yes, this is the space node of the Shinjue Old Devil Immortal Mansion." Talking. When the detailed spatial coordinates of Shinjue Laomoxian Fudong Tian were about to be announced, the divine sense transmission told the Hall Master of Jinhai Temple. Get the spatial coordinates provided by the white-haired old man. The eyes of the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace burst out. I saw that he stretched out his jade-like palm and swiped it lightly, and the space was like a piece of paper, which was easily torn apart by him. Immediately after, layer upon layer of space, he rummaged through layer by layer. "It's not this, it's not right, it's not right." As he rummaged, there were words in his mouth. In the end, his eyes lit up. "It's this, I found it, haha." Next second, a huge space crack appeared in front of everyone. The other end of the space crack was pitch black, leading to an unknown direction. Qin Daoxian looked at it and felt a shiver in his heart. The master artist of Jinhai Palace was bold, waved his hand and said with a smile, "Go, let's go in." Say it. Qin Daoxian, Fairy Qi Yao and others were taken by an inexplicable force and disappeared directly in place. Shinjue Shinfu Dongtian. In a quiet valley, a huge fairy palace is located. Asgard is majestic and majestic. It is not like a mortal dwelling at all, only the door is as high as several dozen feet, and the entire Asgard is as high as 100 feet, which is extremely majestic. Inside Asgard, Sun Mang, who had recovered from his injuries, knelt down in front of an inexplicable zombie. This zombie in front of me is not a real person, but who is it? Compared with Sun Mang, the aura of Shinjue Jinren is much stronger, but the strange thing is that he is also a Zifu-level zombie, not a Jindan zombie. Come to think of it, the real person Shinjue also knows that the calamity of the insidious things like zombies is no trivial matter, and he does not dare to break through to the golden elixir. However, although Shinjue Jinren and Sun Mang were both zombies in the Zifu, their strengths were vastly different, and they were not at the same level at all. Although Sun Mang had the late Zifu cultivation base, he did not have the strength of the late Zifu at all. Not to mention, compared with the real person of Shinjue, his true strength is not necessarily comparable to that of an ordinary human race in the middle of the Purple Palace. This is also the disadvantage of forcibly relying on the blood of immortals to improve their cultivation. The cultivation base can be improved with special treasures, but the realm cannot be improved. Sun Mang is a typical cultivation base that does not match the realm, and cannot exert the strength that his cultivation base should have. But God is different. He was originally a late Jindan cultivator, and his realm was extremely high, far exceeding his late Jindan cultivation. Although he was forced to explode the golden pill 400 years ago, his cultivation base was completely destroyed and he had to switch to the corpse path. But his realm is still there. Although he is also a Zifu cultivation base at the moment, but wanting to kill Sun Mang, the Zifu complete zombie, is nothing but a hands-on thing. Okay, get up, I can't blame you in the end for this matter. Who would have thought that the Qianyuan sword sect was so insidious and cunning, that he would actually send a monster called Jinhai Palace Hall Master? The Shenqing Dao League is also a bunch of waste. They promised to help me hold down the main force of the Qianyuan sword sect. As a result, even the whereabouts of the Jinhai Palace Hall Master are not clear. When it comes to the Shenqing Dao League, Shinjue Jinren seems to be particularly angry. If he hadn't been bewitched by them, he wouldn't have taken it so easily that he would have exposed himself. After waiting for 400 years, I originally thought that this was an excellent opportunity to be born, but I didn't expect that stealing chickens would not be successful. Not only was it impossible to be born, but even the most important immortal corpse clone was lost. You know, the strength of that immortal corpse clone is no trivial matter. Although his realm is limited, he can't exert 1/1000th of the strength of the immortal corpse, but he can also be comparable to the monks in the early nascent soul. Such a formidable combat power was actually lost like this. This makes God very real how to accept. Although it is safe for him to hide in this immortal mansion cave, at the same time, the resources here are extremely poor, which not only limits the improvement of his strength, but also limits his means. Now that the immortal corpse is lost, he doesn't even have the ability to create chaos for Wan Xinghai. In other words, he is useless to the Shenqing Dao League now. The temporary covenant concluded between the two sides naturally became a joke. Every time he thought about this, Shinjue Jin felt a burst of irritability. If it wasn't for the loss of the immortal corpse clone and the blood of the immortal, why would he take the risk of saving a corpse servant from the Z Palace and increase the risk of exposing himself? Shinjue Jin was about to say something else. Next moment, the Shinfu space in front of him fluctuated for a while, and then a group of people drilled out of a dark space crack. It was Qin Daoxian and the group of the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace. Hey, you're training your subordinates, the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace grinned. Didn't I bother you? Town? The shadow of the famous tree of people. If it is said that Shinjue Jinren still dismissed the prestige of Jinhai Hall's Hall Master before. When the immortal corpse clone was planted in the opponent's hands, he knew what the Hall Master of Jinhai Temple was relying on to subdue the alien races in the underwater world of Wangxinghai, so that they would not dare to make any changes. Seeing the terrified expression on Shinju's face, the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace stepped forward step by step, and the teasing expression on his face subsided. Do you want to capture it or let me do it myself? How did you find this place? When the words fell, he glanced at Sun Mang, who was kneeling on the ground, and said with a sad face, I didn't expect that. I was cautious for so long, and I was only greedy once and I fell. Shinjue Jin said with a ruthless expression on his face, however, if you want me to be captured without a hand, I'm delusional. Say it. Shinju real person flashed and rushed towards Qin Daoxian, the weakest among the crowd. He knew that at this moment, only by grasping the weakest Qin Daoxian would he have a chance. However, the people present, except Qin Daoxian, did not have much resistance when facing him. Even Fairy Qi Yao and Fairy Yue are not inferior to him. After losing the immortal corpse clone, Shinjue Jinren is already a tiger who has lost his minions, and he can't make any waves at all. Careful. Beside him, the white-haired old man who had not spoken for a long time hurriedly reminded, and then opened his mouth and spit. I saw a white light spurting out of its mouth. The speed of the white light is extremely fast, and with Qin Daoxuan's consciousness, it is impossible to see the trajectory of the white light at all. In an instant, Bai Guang pierced through the dantian of the real person, and smashed his corpse into pieces. Immortal Shenju's figure froze for a moment. He lowered his head, glanced at his pierced abdominal cavity, raised his head and smiled miserably. You, just think. To be a dog for them? After saying that, his body fell to the ground. At this point, the real Shenjue who ravaged Wangxinghai 400 years ago was completely dead. The white-haired old man saw the tragic state of Shenju Jinren, and his eyes flashed with sadness. Then a smile appeared on his vicissitudes of life, and he looked at Qin Daoxian and said, "Are you okay, fellow Taoist?" "I'm fine, thank you, senior, for your help." Qin Daoxian bowed his hands. "You are welcome." The white-haired old man nodded, then stood behind the hall master of Jinhai Palace without saying a word. The hall master of Jinhai Palace glanced at Sun Meng, who was kneeling on the ground. He shook his head, and after obliterating it he looked at everyone and said, "Okay, this is the immortal mansion built by the immortals from the upper realm. You can explore on your own. The harvest belongs to you personally." "Real?" When Fairy Yue heard this, her eyes lit up. Fairy Qiyao gave a blessing and said, "Thank you, uncle. It's all my own family, don't be polite." The hall master of Jinhai Palace smiled and waved his hand, then looked at Qin Daoxian. "Your name is Qin Daoxian, right?" "Yes, the younger generation is Qin Daoxian." When Qin Daoxian heard his name called by the master of Jinhai Palace, he immediately showed a panicked expression. The hall master of Jinhai Hall nodded. "This time you have made the first contribution to pacifying the corpse tied in Sangzhou, and then you have offered advice to find the real person of Shenjue. My Qinyuan sword sect will reward you, and this exploration of the immortal mansion is given to you in advance. A small reward." "Thank you, senior." Qin Daoxian was very excited. Divine Immortal Mansion. According to rumors, this is the immortal mansion where the immortals from the upper realms are sitting. The owner of Jinhai Palace actually asked them to search for treasures by themselves, which is extremely generous. The legacy of an immortal from the upper realm, although it has been chewed by Shenjue Jinren, is still of great value. For example, Shenjue Jinren was the famous escape artifact, Michin Banner. It was very attractive to Qin Daoxian. The three of them were excited, and they divided into 3 paths to explore this immortal mansion. The hall master of Jinhai Palace looked at the palace. Behind him, the white-haired old man transformed by Kong Mingchan looked hesitant, as if he had something to say. The hall master of Jinhai Hall turned around and said indifferently, "If you have something to say, you don't have to hide it." "Pity Lord." Hearing this, the white-haired old man immediately knelt down on the ground and kept kowtowing. "My Kongmingchen clan has 7 4th-order peak clansmen so far. All of them are in urgent need of transformation, and their subordinates are bold and want to ask for one for the clan transformation quota." Saying that, the white-haired old man buried his head deeply on the ground, not daring to raise his head. "Old guy, the quotas for the transformations of the Wangxinghai tribes are determined by the Qinyuan sword sect, the Jinhai temple supervision and the Kongmingchen clan. There is only one transformation quota. Your request has been passed." The hall master of Jinhai Palace looked indifferent. "Hall master." The white-haired old man's face was miserable, and he kept kowtowing. "It has been 1,000 years since my son's cultivation base has been promoted to the peak of the 4th rank. If he does not change his form, I am afraid that he will not have much life. Show mercy." "As I said, there is only one person in the Kongmingchen clan, and if your son changes shape you have to die. Do you want to die?" The hall master of Jinhai Palace looked at him indifferently. The white-haired old man was silent. The hall master of Jinhai Hall stopped looking at him immediately. His eyes turned to the outside of the hall, and said indifferently, "Isn't this how your Kongmingchen clan has come here for thousands of years? Old man, the law is the law, you have to learn to adapt and get used to it." "Heard." The white-haired old man curled his fingers slightly, buried his head lower, close to the ground, and a trace of resentment was deeply hidden in his eyes. "This fairy palace occupies a very large area. It is more than 10 times larger than the Lingfu built by Qin Daoxian, and this fairy palace actually limits the spiritual consciousness of the monks. Qin Daoxian found that he could probe 100 miles of divine consciousness outside, but here he could only probe less than 100 zhang, and his divine consciousness was limited more than 100 times. The limited consciousness undoubtedly hindered the speed of their exploration of the Immortal Mansion. In addition, the valuable treasures in the Immortal Mansion were basically used up by Shinjue Jinren. In fact, what Qin Daoxian cares about most is not the treasure, but the inheritance left by the immortals. You must know that only the magical power of Ding Soul Divine Light will make Shinjue real people all over the Sea of Stars. If you find one or two inheritances that can be compared with this magical power, then... When Qin Daoxian thought of this, his heart became even more excited. But with continuous exploration, Qin Daoxian's heart gradually cooled down. This immortal palace, not to mention the inheritance of treasures, can't even see a single elixir, and the resources are outrageous. I really don't know how Shinjue Jin has survived these 400 years. Qin Daoxian shook his head. So, half a day passed. Qin Daoxian met Fairy Qiyao and Fairy Yue again after walking for 3 hours. After the three of them met, they told about the area they explored and found no treasures. This news dispelled a lot of enthusiasm. After some discussion, the three decided to walk towards the last area together. If you can't find anything of value, you can only go home empty-handed. It took about a stick of incense. Everyone finally came to an elegant palace with 3 ancient spiritual writings written on the plaque of the palace. Qin Daoxian did not know this kind of writing. As for Fairy Qiyao and Fairy Yue, seeing these 3 ancient spirits, their pretty faces were full of joy. It's Treasure Pavilion. It seems that our trip has finally paid off. Yue said happily. Come on, let's go in. Fairy Qiyao smiled slightly. Qin Daoxian nodded, okay. The 3 pushed open the door together. As the gate opened, the scene inside the palace appeared in front of everyone. The palace was empty, only a light group floated in the center of the palace. That is... Qin Daoxian's pupils shrank. As a third-order artifact refiner, he could see the extraordinariness of the magical artifact in the light group in front of him at a glance. The highest-level magic weapon Qin Daoxian has ever encountered so far is the Linglong Pagoda of the 9 Ruins, which he exchanged from Qinyuan Jianzong for his exploits. It's just that the Linglong Pagoda of the 9 Ruins is an auxiliary magical tool for cultivating younger generations, and it is slightly different from the magical tool used by monks. The Linglong Pagoda of the 9 Ruins is only a 4th-order high grade. Compared with the magic weapon in front of him, the aura contained in the two is very different. Obviously, this is a high-level magic weapon whose rank far exceeds that of the 9 Ruins Linglong Pagoda. I just don't know if it is a 5th-order or 6th-order magic weapon. Chapter 209. Michin Banner. Fairy Yue said with joy on her pretty face when she saw the light group suspended in mid-air. Immediately, she took a step forward and easily broke the restriction left by Shinjue Jinren. Looking at Michin Banner overflowing with spiritual light, Fairy Yue said with a smile, Senior sister, this trip is not in vain. Qiyao was much calmer, nodded and said, Since this is the treasure pavilion, there must be other treasures, let's look for it. Aha! Fairy Yue played with Michin Banner with her jade hand and nodded hurriedly. Qin Daoxian naturally had no opinion. After half a cup of tea, everyone looked around in the treasure pavilion, but found that apart from this Michin Banner, there was no other treasure in the entire treasure pavilion. This? Fairy Yue frowned and pouted, her expression slightly dissatisfied. It's only one treasure, how do we divide it between the 3 of us? Aside. Although Qin Daoxian is very fond of this treasure, she are after all the direct disciples of Qinyuan Sword Sect. It's better to be a friendly person. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian cupped his hands and said, Since this treasure was obtained by Fairy Yue, it naturally belongs to the 2 fairies, and I will not participate in the distribution of treasures. Hear this. Fairy Yue's pretty face was full of playfulness and she said with a tender smile, Do you know what treasure is this magic weapon in my hand? Don't you regret it? Hearing this, Qin Daoxian smiled and said, Although I don't know much about the deeds of Shinju, I still know a little about Mi Qin Fan's name. This time, Fairy Yue was surprised. You know Mi Qin Fan and are you willing to give it to my sisters? Do you know that once you have it, true monarch nascent soul will never take you down? Qin Daoxian smiled and stopped talking. Okay junior sister, stop teasing fellow Taoist Qin. Fairy Qiyao shook her head and turned to look at Qin Daoxian. Since this treasure was discovered by the 3 of us, it should be owned by the 3 of us. She paused. Junior sister and I practice in the sect on weekdays, and we rarely have the chance to use this treasure, so it's better to keep it in your hands. If there is a place for my sister to use it in the future, come and borrow it from you, just don't be stingy. Hear this. Qin Daoxian said sternly. Fairy Qi Yao, please rest assured, I can make an oath of the avenue in front of the two of you. The great Dao oath is unnecessary. Fairy Qi Yao gave him a deep look. I believe in fellow Daoist Chen. Hearing what senior sister said, Fairy Yue handed over the Mi Qin banner in her hand and said with a smile, well, it's cheaper for you. Qin Daoxian took the Mi Qin fan, looked at it a little and put it in the storage bag. After this sharing of treasures, both sides have a much better perception of each other in their hearts. Qin Daoxian said with emotion, I really didn't expect that the huge Shinjue immortal mansion was so barren that it didn't even have a spirit medicine garden. Fairy Qi Yao sighed and said, this is the place where the immortals sit on their deathbeds. Who would have the mind to open up a spirit medicine garden in their own place? Hearing this, Qin Daoxian was stunned for a moment and smiled. What the fairy said is very true. Chat room. The three returned to the main hall again. Seeing a few people, the hall master of Jinhai Palace, who knew the result long ago, said with a smile, have you finished finding the treasure? Hear this. Fairy Qi Yao has not spoken yet. Yue pouted and said dissatisfiedly, Master, you are bullying others, I will tell Master to go back to the sect. Hearing this threat, the face of the hall master of Jinhai Palace collapsed. He helplessly said, a fourth-order magic weapon. Make a deal. After the uncle extorted a fourth-order magic weapon, Fairy Yue smiled again. After half a cup of tea, everyone returned to the Lingfu of Guanhai Xianqing again. After sending Qin Daoxian back to Lingfu, the hall master of Jinhai Palace looked at him and said, the post-war reward for pacifying the corpse tied in Sangzhou will be held in Qinyuan Sword Sect in January. Don't forget to participate. Yes, senior. The hall master of Jinhai Hall nodded, then broke open the space and left with Fairy Qi Yao and his party. I watched the lord of Jinhai Palace leave. Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief as if he had unloaded his heavy burden. To be honest, Qin Daoxian didn't know what the strength of the Jinhai Hall's master was. But seeing the other party tearing apart the space like a piece of paper, Qin Daoxian knew in his heart that the other party's cultivation might be above the true monarch returning Yuaning. However, if the high-level monks did not deliberately reveal their cultivation in front of the low-level monks, the low-level monks would have no way of knowing the specific cultivation level of the high-level monks. Therefore, Qin Daoxian can only guess a little about the cultivation base of the Jinhai Palace Hall Master. 10 days later. The fairy city of Guang'an Prefecture. After Shinjue Jinren died, only a few days later, the scattered corpses in Sangzhou were completely wiped out by the Sangzhou coalition forces. Although after this battle, Sangzhou suffered a lot of losses. But in general, the corpse chaos only spread in the boundary between Guang'an Prefecture and Sangzhou Xianqing, and did not spread to other prefectures. Even the Guang'an mansion itself suffered relatively little damage. Apart from the destruction of the Zhao family of the Guang'an mansion, there was almost no other loss. This corpse tied. The one who suffered the most was the Yi family in Sangzhou. As the first family in Sangzhou, the Yi family controls Sangzhou Xianqing, which is also the largest Xianqing in Sangzhou. But after this corpse chaos, Sangzhou Xianqing, which is 100,000 miles away, suffered an unprecedented massacre, whether it was a monk or a mortal. Especially the area from Lianhu Island to Sangzhou Xianqing is the core area where the corpse tide is raging. And this area is also the Yi family's sphere of influence. In this way, even if Sangzhou Xianqing blocks the spread of the corpse tide, the decline of Sangzhou Xianqing in the future is also predictable. After all, without enough monks, there would be no prosperous commerce. Boom. A spirit void battleship cut through the sky and slowly landed at the Zhou family station. On the battleship, a flash of light flew down. It was Qin Daoxian. On the square of the main hall of the Allied Forces headquarters, tens of thousands of foundation-building cultivators gathered together, and all the cultivators were smiling at this moment. Because today is the day when the Allied Forces will discuss merits and awards. This time, protecting Sangzhou Xianqing and preventing the raging tide of corpses benefited from every cultivator of the Sangzhou coalition fighting desperately. This feeling of victory. Since Zhenangwen fell 50 years ago, Sangzhou cultivators have never experienced it again. It has to be said that defeating the corpse tide has greatly encouraged the morale of Sangzhou. Friend Qin is here. Look, it's Dao Yu Qin. Friend Qin. I've seen Dao Yu Qin. Along the way. In the square of the main hall of the headquarters, whether Qin Daoxian knew or he did not know, they all bowed their hands to him. Everyone looked at him with a look of reverence. Qin Daoxian was not arrogant and kept smiling and nodding at everyone. In the end, I actually felt that the corners of my mouth were slightly numb. Enter the hall. Zhangzhou Zifu monks gathered together. Look around. In the hall there are Yang Linyuan and Yang Gongwan, the ancestors of the Yang family that Qin Daoxian is familiar with, Zhou Mingho, Zhou Mubai, the heads of the Zhou family, and Zhang Shenling of Jinan House. He even saw the Yi family's Zifu cultivator, also in the Allied Army Hall. Keeping hands with everyone, Qin Daoxian slowly stood in his position, waiting for those who didn't arrive. About half an hour. The cultivators of the Zifu of the Zhangzhou Allied forces have all arrived. Seeing this, Zhou Mingho, who was at the top of the list, smiled and said, "This time, everyone present has made outstanding achievements in pacifying the corpse tied in Zhangzhou. Therefore the Qinyuan sword sect decided to reward you." Speaking of this, Zhou Mingho paused slightly. Everyone was overjoyed when they heard the exact news. Although everyone knew for a long time that the Qinyuan sword sect would reward the Zhangzhou cultivator who calmed down the corpse, but now they have received a letter of approval from the commander of the coalition army, everyone is still very happy. Wait until the hall is quiet again. Zhou Mingho continued, "Of course, with so many of us, it is impossible for all of us to rush to Qinyuan Jianzong. Therefore, I have drawn up a list of monks who will go to Qinyuan Jianzong." Hearing this, the cultivators nodded. There are more than 100 monks in Guangxi House in the hall, and there are more than 100 monks outside the hall. It is naturally impossible for so many monks to go to Qinyuan Jianzong. Everyone knows that there are only a few who can go to Qinyuan Jianzong in person. They may not be clear to others, but Qin Daoxian, who made great achievements in Zhangzhou Xianqing, must be on the list. After all, Qin Daoxian's contribution is obvious to all. If even he can't go to Qinyuan Jianzong to get the reward, it is even more impossible for others. See everyone nod. Zhou Mingho threw out a jade slip, and suddenly, a light curtain appeared in front of everyone. On the light curtain, the names are listed on it, and the first one is Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian was not surprised when he saw his name. Regarding the reward he received from the Qinyuan sword sect, the hall master of Jinhai Hall had already told him personally. It's just a passing game now. On the list, in addition to Qin Daoxian, Zhou Mingho, Huoling Taoist, Henry Zhang, Zhou Mubai and others were all listed. If you count it carefully, there are actually 17 monks. The other 16 were all cultivators from the Purple House, and he was the only base-building cultivator. These 17 monks are basically the representatives of the monks of the largest families in each government. But the strange thing is that there is no cultivator of the Yi family on this list. See this scene. Yi Hongxing, the elder of the Yi family, had a pale face. He walked out of the crowd and said solemnly, "Dare to ask Dao Yuzhou what does this mean? My Yi family does not dare to say that I have made great contributions to calming the corpse down. In this war, the cultivators of my Yi family who died in the battle are at the top of the houses. Is my Yi family not qualified to participate in this Qinyuan sword sect award?" Hearing this question, the hall quickly became quiet. Zhou Mingho smiled and said, "Who said that the Yi family is not eligible to participate in the Qinyuan sword sect award? Dao Yi forgot, isn't your Yi family ancestor in the Qinyuan sword sect? I think it is very appropriate to represent the Yi family to participate in this Qinyuan sword sect award as old ancestor Yi. What do you think?" Zhou Mingho said, looking at Yi Hongxing with a smile. Inside the hall, when the crowd heard this, they burst into laughter. The face of the cultivator of the Yi family changed for a while, and finally Yi Hongxing cupped his hands and said with a dark face, "In this case, our Yi family will retire first. Friend Yi, walk slowly and don't send it off." The smile on Zhou Mingho's face gradually subsided and he said coldly, "Humph." Yi Hongxing glanced at the people present, and walked away with the cultivator of the Yi family Zifu behind him. Chapter 210. The next day. A spirit boat rushed straight into the sky, heading in the direction of Qinyuan Jianzong. In the spirit boat cabin, Qin Daoxian, Zhou Mubai, Henry Zhang, Taoist Huoling and others sat around a table. "Brother Zhou, I look at old ancestor Zhou's attitude yesterday. Is your Zhou family planning to break with the Yi family?" "Yes, what is your Zhou family's attitude now?" Hearing this, Taoist Huoling couldn't wait to ask. Seeing the expressions on everyone's faces, Zhou Mubai sighed. "So far, what if our Zhou family and Yi family don't break up? Qinyuan Jianzong must recover Zhenengwen next and not break with the Yi family. Do you want Yi Wudao to lead Zhangzhou monks to recover Zhenengwen?" What a joke. Henry Zhang suddenly got up excitedly, then sat down again and said angrily, "My Zhang family can't let Yi Wudao command anyone in my Zhang family again." "Look." Zhou Mubai opened his hand to Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian frowned. It has to be said that Yi Wudao's escape this time made the entire Cangzhou cultivator, including the Yi family's own clan, completely cold-hearted towards this Yi family ancestor. Such a villain who fled in the wind, no matter how high his cultivation base was, how could everyone dare to let him command the army to recover Zhenangwen? Then, what are you going to do next? Brother Qin, what do you mean? Henry Zhang looked at Qin Daoxian. I mean, since everyone has decided to turn against the Yi family, let's do it completely. Why do it completely? Daoist Huoling immediately became interested. Looking around the crowd, Qin Daoxian said, everyone knows that Cangzhou Xianqing is the largest Xianqing in Cangzhou. In addition, it also assumes the role of the trade hub of various governments. Hearing this, Taoist Huoling thought for a while and said, it is true, most of my Zhao family's Lingyu mines are sold to Cangzhou prefectures in Cangzhou Xianqing. My Zhou family's medicinal herbs were also sold to Cangzhou prefectures in Cangzhou Xianqing. Zhou Mubai nodded. Henry Zhang frowned and said, my Zhang family is the same. So, as long as the Yi family holds Cangzhou Xianqing in their hands, it is equivalent to holding the business power of Cangzhou's prefectures in their hands. What effect can our so-called break with the Yi family play? Hear this. Everyone was silent. For a long time, Zhou Mubai looked at Qin Daoxian with deep eyes. You mean we choose a fairy city among the immortal clans of various prefectures as a new business hub? Yes, but not quite. Qin Daoxian paused. May I ask, if the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture is chosen as the new business hub, would the immortal clans of each prefecture be willing? Hear this. Henry Zhang and Daoist Huoling were silent. Although they had a good personal relationship with Zhou Mubai, Daoist Huoling had a life-and-death friendship with Zhou Mubai. But after all, this involves the interests of the family and the vital interests of hundreds of thousands of cultivators. They can't get rid of the public for private reasons. In the same way, if you choose the immortal city of the Zhang family in Jinan Mansion or the immortal city of the Zhao family in Xuan Mansion, other ethnic groups will also be dissatisfied. For today's plan, we can only give up Cangzhou Xianqing and build a new Xianqing. Henry Zhang was decisive. But the location of Xianqing, where is it elected? The fire spirit Daoist sighed. The distances between Wan Xinghai's houses are at least 100,000 miles away. This distance is nothing to the Zifu cultivator. Whether it is his own speed of escaping light or driving a spirit boat, he can easily gallop in Cangzhou. But for the monks in the Qi refining period, the provinces are too far apart. For example, it took a month for the Qin family on Shuanghu Island to go to the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture. This is only within the territory. What about going to other provinces in Cangzhou? Wouldn't it take months or even years to spend on the road? The lifespan of a cultivator in the Qi refining period is limited. How can you waste so much time on the road? Do you not need to cultivate? Originally, Cangzhou Xianqing was used as a transit hub because the Yi family had a relationship and could mobilize large transport ships from the front line of the Izumo kingdom to and from the states. The prefectures can take advantage of the east wind of the frontline transport ships to transport their goods to Cangzhou Xianqing to complete trade exchanges. But if you leave the Yi family aside, they don't have such a large transport ship, which can be used for business exchanges between the provinces in Cangzhou. Seeing that everyone was helpless, Qin Daoxian said sternly, in the end, it's still a transportation issue. Yes. The three nodded. Compared with this problem, no matter which immortal city you choose as a business hub, it is better than choosing Cangzhou Immortal City. Anyway, everyone is now feeling disgust and hatred towards the Yi family, especially towards Yi Wudao. Qin Daoxian leaned forward slightly and said, I think this time is an opportunity. What chance? You think Yi Wudao abandoned the city and fled this time? Not only our Cangzhou cultivators are dissatisfied, but there must be many people in Shenyuan Jianzhong who are dissatisfied with him. Hearing this, Zhou Mubai nodded. Indeed, Yi Wudao left Jinan Pass and fled back then, causing a great disturbance within the Qinyuan sword sect, and finally the third elder of the Qinyuan sword sect calmed down the disturbance. However, the storm can be calmed down, but the dissatisfaction in everyone's heart cannot be calmed down. Right? Qin Daoxian clapped his hands and said, in addition, this time he abandoned the city and fled, and the dissatisfaction with him within the Qinyuan sword sect will become stronger. After all, the recovery of Zhenangwen is imminent, and the main force in recovering Zhenangwen is my Cangzhou cultivator. Is Qinyuan Jianzhong still willing to let Yi Wudao be the commander-in-chief of the recovery of Zhenangwen this time? You mean Qinyuan Jianzhong wants to suppress the Yi family? Certain. Qin Daoxian nodded. But, what does this have to do with us building a new fairy city of commerce? Taoist Hualing looked at Qin Daoxian in confusion. Qin Daoxian explained patiently, even if Qinyuan Jianzong is dissatisfied with Yi Wudao and the Yi family in view of Yi Wudao's father, it is not easy to directly suppress it. But if we Cangzhou cultivators spontaneously boycott the Yi family, I think Qinyuan Jianzong would not mind pushing the boat along the way. Zhou Mubai frowned. How do we judge Qinyuan Jianzong's willingness to push the boat? It's simple, Qin Daoxian took a deep breath. We just need to see if there are any large transport ships in this Qinyuan Sword Sect's award. Hearing this, Henry Zhang gave Qin Daoxian a deep look. Half a month later, a spirit boat broke through the sky and flew towards the giant spirit island where Qinyuan Jianzong was located. Brother Zhang's wind-wing spirit boat is really fast. It's actually twice as fast as my Zhou family's spirit void battleship. Seeing that the Qinyuan Sword Sect was already in sight, Zhou Mubai said with emotion. Brother Zhou envy me and I also envy your Zhou family. Henry Zhang shook his head with a smile. No matter how good my wind-wing spirit boat is, there is only this one. Unlike your Zhou family, there are not only more than 100 spirit void battleships, but also master the refining process of spirit void battleships. Look, the Qingkuan Yang locking array. Taoist Hualing pointed to the countless islands outside the giant spiritual island. Everyone knows that every island represents a disciple of Qinyuan Sword Sect. Outer sect disciples are at the outermost edge, inner sect disciples are in the middle, and the island closest to the giant island is the island of direct disciples. Taoist Hualing stood by the railing and introduced them like a few treasures. Qin Daoxian looked in the direction of his fingers. I saw that outside the giant Lingbei Island, large islands comparable to Lingbei Island, or even larger than Lingbei Island, were located around the giant Lingbei Island. These large islands are the dojos of the direct disciples of the Qinyuan Sword Sect in the population of Hualingdao. Come to think of it, Fairy Qiyao and Fairy Yu's dojos are located on these giant islands. Qin Daoxian said silently. This moment, he finally knew how powerful the Qinyuan Sword Sect was. Not to mention the giant spiritual island in the center. Just talking about the countless large islands around you, you know how strong the strength of Qinyuan Sword Sect is. Each of those large islands represents a cultivator whose combat power far exceeds that of the same rank. Not to mention the top-level power of Qinyuan Jianzong. These direct disciples alone are a terrifying force capable of suppressing Wan Xinghai. To know, the direct disciples of Qinyuan Jianzong did not have rigid rules on cultivation. Among them are the monks in the foundation building stage as well as the monks in the Jindan and even the nascent soul stage. The direct disciples of Qinyuan Sword Sect had a very high status. Generally speaking, they were equivalent to ordinary elders. Moreover, with the improvement of the cultivation base of the direct disciple, his status will also be higher. If the direct disciple is promoted to the Yuanying stage, he can even automatically obtain the right to inherit the next suzerain of the Qinyuan Sword Sect. Of course, there are also special cases here. For example, some direct disciples have not yet reached the Yuanying stage, but they have obtained the right to inherit the Qinyuan Sword Sect. These cultivators are all talented people with unlimited potential. Fairy Qiyao is one of them. Qin Daoxian comprehended the sword intent during his qi refining period, although this speed is ancient and modern in Qinyuan Jianzong. But unfortunately, the sword intent he comprehended was only a branch of the sword intent of the water movement, with limited potential. Unlike the original Zhenhai Palace who just realized the sword intent, he realized the space sword intent in the spacetime sword intent. He is known as the monk with the most talent and potential in the history of Qinyuan Jianzong. The spirit boat travels outside the giant island and hovers automatically. It's not that Henry Zhang is willing to stop, but that there is no way ahead. The space in front of them has been completely blocked by the Qingkuan Yang locking array. In this formation, the degree of solidification of space is more than 10 times more terrifying than the outside world. Not only that, everyone found that in front of them, there was an invisible space barrier blocking their way. The spirit boat was suspended outside the space barrier, and Qin Daoxian couldn't help but touch the space barrier, like a layer of transparent walls, completely isolating the inner and outer space. This kind of space barrier is very common in Qinyuan Jianzong. Taoist Hualing said, each island of Qinyuan Sword Sect is actually an independent cave. Generally, without the permission and invitation of the owner of the cave, it is difficult for outsiders to enter. It's so exaggerated. Yes. Zhou Mubai nodded in agreement. A few people talking. A space portal suddenly opened. Qin Daoxian only felt an unheard of pure spiritual energy rushing out of the cave. Everyone, let's go in. Henry Zhang looked solemn. Chapter 211. As the spirit boat slowly drilled out of the space portal, everyone only felt a sense of willows and flowers welling up in their hearts. Looking at the scene in front of him that seemed like a fairyland, Qin Daoxian couldn't believe his eyes. As soon as you enter your eyes, the immortal palaces are suspended above the clouds, and you don't know the end. Below Asgard, it is the residence of mortals. Looking around, there are countless mortals living in this cave world. Qin Daoxian observed it a little and found that the mortals here are completely different from the mortals in Sangzhou. From time to time, there are immortal boats flying through the sky. But the mortals below are not at all like the outside world. When they see immortals, they will kneel and kowtow at every turn. Instead, they look like a matter of course. It can be seen that the living conditions of mortals here are much higher than those of the outside world. Qin Daoxian saw something different from these mortals, but he couldn't say it. It was not until Qinyuan Jianzong came to greet the disciples of everyone that he knew what this different thing was. That was self-confidence. Compared with the numbness of the mortals outside, the mortals here have more sincere confidence. Brother Qin, the people from Qinyuan Jianzong are here. Hearing Zhou Mubai's reminder, Qin Daoxian looked forward. Really? A spirit boat flew towards the crowd, and before it got close, a light flew out from the spirit boat. In a blink, Fu Guang flew to the front of the wind-wing spirit boat. The escape light stopped, and a young monk wearing the robe of the inner disciple of Qinyuan Jianzong appeared in front of everyone. The young monk had a handsome face and a kind-hearted look. But the cultivation base is as high as the late period of Zifu, which is higher than the cultivation base of most people present. I met Han Huiping, an inner disciple of Xia Qinyuan sword sect, and met all fellow Taoists. I've seen fellow Taoist Han. Everyone did not dare to neglect, and they bowed their hands to the inner disciple of the Qinyuan sword sect named Han Huiping. Han is ordered by the sect to welcome all of you into the sect as a reward, please. Han Huiping made a pleased gesture. When Qin Daoxian heard this, he was quite surprised. We came here by such a coincidence that we can get a reward just after we came? Fellow Taoist has been thinking too much, Han Huiping explained with a smile. This award will be held in 10 days. I'm here to welcome you to stay in the sect for a few days. Of course, if you have other residences in our sect, you can decide for yourself. Hear this. Taoist Hualing laughed and said, since that's the case, Brother Zhou, fellow Taoists, I want be with you. Okay. Zhou Mubai nodded. Seeing that Qin Daoxian's face had a strange look beside him, Zhou Mubai explained through voice transmission. Zhao Daoya's aunt is the Taoist companion of an elder of Qinyuan Jianzong. Brother Zhao still has such an identity? Qin Daoxian was surprised. Zhou Mubai explained with a smile. Almost all the big families of Wanxinghai are inextricably linked with the Qinyuan sword sect. You wouldn't think that only Yi Wudao of the Yi family has something to do with the Qinyuan sword sect? Hearing this, Qin Daoxian fell silent. He really thought so before. The background of the big family is far from being comparable to the sudden rise of the Qin family on his Shuanghu Island. This kind of background is not only reflected in the hard power of the big family, but also in its intricate network of relationships. Otherwise, why would the big families in Sangzhou not give face to the Yi family? Qin Daoxian couldn't help thinking of the Zhou family. Zhou Mingho dared to break with the Yi family so blatantly. The Zhou family's relationship network is definitely not simple. I just don't know what the Zhou family's background is in Qinyuan Jianzong. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help looking around the crowd. He found that among the crowd, he seemed to be the only one who had no background in Qinyuan sword sect. Really? As Taoist Hualing first proposed to leave the team, everyone decided on their own where to go. Zhou Mubai and Zhou Mingho were no exception. They all left the team. Less than half a cup of tea. In front of Han Huiping, Qin Daoxian was the only one left. Han Huiping smiled politely and said, I don't know how to call you friends? Qin Daoxian is here. Hearing this, Han Huiping nodded, stretched out his hand and said, fellow Taoist Qin, please? Thank you. Qin Daoxian bowed his hands and along with Han Huiping, boarded the spirit boat he had come to greet everyone, and flew towards the fairy palace in the clouds. Along the way, Qin Daoxian took the initiative to chat with Han Huiping. Fellow Taoist Han, why do I think that after entering the cave world the area here is bigger than the outside world? Hear this. Han Huiping smiled slightly. Fellow Daoist Chen is right, the cave of my Qinyuan sword sect is indeed much larger than the outside world. It is probably the first time that you have come to my Qinyuan sword sect, right? Yes, first time here. No wonder, Han Huiping nodded. Actually, this is not a secret. At the beginning of my Qinyuan sword sect, I killed a world monster and refined this main cave with its body. World demon? Chen Daoxian immediately grasped the key point of the other party's words. However, Han Huiping did not mean to explain. He pointed down and said, compared with the immortal cities of the major families in Wanxinghai, my Qinyuan sword sect completely separates mortals and monks. The mortals live on the ground, and the monks live in the Hentang Immortal Palace. The two are clearly separated, and the ordinary disciples are not allowed to interfere with the mortals. Heard? Chen Daoxian pointed to the continuous Immortal Palace in front of the spirit boat, and said, is this the Hentang Immortal Palace? Yes, in 10 days you will receive the sect master's reward in Yunxiao Palace. Speaking of this, Han Huiping's eyes showed a look of envy. Presumably this award will be very powerful. Otherwise, the sect master will not be rewarded by himself. He just heard that the Zhangzhou cultivators had quelled the corpse tide this time. As for the killing of Xinjue Jinren, Shenyuan Jianzong did not publicize it. After all, 400 years ago, Shenyuan Jianzong had already announced that Xinjue Jinren had been put to death. Now to overthrow the previous statement, wouldn't it be a slap in the face? This kind of thing is naturally not good for publicity. However, although publicity cannot be promoted, the Zhangzhou cultivators' credit is real. The actual reward cannot be less. Rewards and punishments are clear, which is the foundation of Shenyuan Jianzong's attack on Qiyun Kingdom. When Yi Wudao abandoned the city and fled, Shenyuan Jianzong did not execute him. To a certain extent, it was a huge blow to the prestige of Shenyuan Jianzong. And it also caused all Zhangzhou monks to suffer infamy. This time, whether it is to appease the Zhangzhou cultivator or suppress the influence of the third elder in the sect master faction will reward the Zhangzhou cultivator. The speed of the spirit boat is extremely fast. About half an hour. Qin Daoxian arrived at the palace where he stayed. The Yunding Immortal Palace where Shenyuan Jianzong is located is not so much an immortal palace as it is an incomparably huge floating immortal city. In this floating fairy city, floating mountains are looming, and there are countless immortal palaces inside. In the sky there are cranes flying, and at the end of the line of sight, a silver horse is roaring. According to Han Huiping's description, the silver training is a Tianhe. This scene, where is the Xinjia sect, is exactly the same as the heaven in Qin Daoxian's memory. Perhaps, for mortals living on earth, the existence of Qinyuan sword sect is not much different from the legendary heavenly court. Blink of an eye. 10 days have passed. This day, one after another escape light flew towards the Yunxiao Palace. Inside Yunxiao Palace, an extremely powerful aura filled the palace. Qin Daoxian and other Zhangzhou cultivators walked together and entered the hall. Junior Qin Daoxian pays tribute to the sect master. Everyone stood in the center of Asgard, bowed and saluted, not daring to look directly at the ethereal figure on the cloud bed. Exemption. Thank you, sect master. Everyone stood up straight again. Only Qin Daoxian was quite surprised. He had never known before that the suzerain of Qinyuan sword sect was actually a woman. But this is the case. Although Qin Daoxian was surprised, his face was no different from ordinary people, and there was no difference. On the lower left of the sect master of Qinyuan sword sect, a young Taoist coughed softly and said slowly, reporting to sect master, Zhangzhou cultivator has done a good job in pacifying the corpse tide in Zhangzhou this time, and he should be rewarded. Hearing this, the sect master of Qinyuan sword sect nodded. What do you think of the elders? Sect master, an old man with white hair and beard, stood up and said, as we all know, Zhangzhou cultivators lost the Jinan Pass back then, but they were not punished. This time the corpses in Zhangzhou were pacified. Elder Wu's words are bad. As soon as the old man finished speaking, a middle-aged cultivator stood up and frowned. Zhangzhou cultivator lost Zhenangwen, and Yi Wudao, the main general, has already been punished. Why didn't he say punishment? Besides, the monks who quelled the corpse tide in Zhangzhou this time were not the same group of monks who guarded Zhenangwen back then. Does Elder Wu's remarks make the Zhangzhou monks feel chills? Hear this. This true monarch nascent soul named Elder Wu's eyes flickered, and finally sat back without saying a word. Inside Asgard, everyone whispered for a while and finally reached an agreement, cupped their hands and said, it's all up to the sect master's orders. Okay, since everyone agrees to award the reward, then the reward will be awarded according to the frontline military merit system. The sect master of Qinyuan Jianzong made a final decision. But this time someone stood up. This person is none other than Yi Wudao, the ancestor of the Yi family who went to Qinyuan Sword Sect to seek help. I saw Yi Wudao standing up from the three elders and cupped his hands, reporting to the sect master, I have a different meaning for this award. Moment. The entire hall became audible for needles falling. The third elder, Yi Yin, looked indifferent as if the scene in front of him had nothing to do with him. The people of the sect master's family all looked at Yi Wudao and Yi Yin coldly at this moment. Even the people with the neutral faction in the sect were all dissatisfied with the people of the three elders. This time, the voice of the sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect was no longer soft, but revealed a hint of coldness. Yi Wudao was under tremendous pressure, gritted his teeth and said with a face full of recklessness, I think that this time the corpse tied in Cangzhou will be quelled, and my Yi family should be the first. In the battle of Cangzhou Xianqing, my Yi family contributed the most. In terms of the number of cultivators who participated in the battle, my Yi family participated in the most cultivators, and in terms of the resources spent, almost all of the resources were borne by my Yi family. Therefore, I think that this time, the Yi family has taken the lead in quelling the corpse tide. Three elders, what do you think? The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect didn't even look at Yi Wudao, but looked at Yi Yin who was silent and said slowly. Yi Yin's face didn't change in the slightest, he cupped his hands and said indifferently, it's all up to the sect master, below. When the other Cangzhou cultivators heard Yi Wudao's words, they all trembled with anger. In the crowd, Zhang Xianling stood up and said loudly, Sect master, I have something to say below. The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect nodded, speak. Yes, sect master. Henry Zhang cupped his hands and then glared at Yi Wudao. Dare to ask Yi Daoyu, where were you in the battle to defend Cangzhou Xianqing a month ago? Yi Wudao frowned slightly, looked at Henry Zhang with gloomy eyes and said, Junior, just rely on you, dare to question the old man? Zhang is not afraid to face the tide of hundreds of millions of corpses, why dare to ask a coward who is running away? You want to die. The word coward completely irritated Yi Wudao, but he finally knew what the occasion was. If he dared to take action in public here today, even his father Yi Yin would not be able to keep him. Yi Wudao took a deep breath, then looked at the sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect, cupped his hands and said, Sect Master Mingjian, a month ago I saw a large tide of corpses in Cangzhou, so I went to the sect for help in desperation. It was also fortunate that I asked for help in time, and the hall master of Jinhai Temple was able to rush to Cangzhou Xianqing at a critical moment to quell the tide of corpses in one fell swoop. Having said that, Yi Wudao also cast a grateful look at the hall master of Jinhai Palace. When Qin Zhan saw the look he handed over, he suddenly laughed. Yi Wudao, who saw this smile, trembled in his heart. When Yi Wudao was at a loss, a voice came from the sea of consciousness, Boy, keep jumping, your death is not far away. Yi Wudao heard the voice of the hall master of Jinhai Palace, and his face turned pale with fright. When Yi Wudao's face was pale. The next moment Yi Yin's voice appeared in Yi Wudao's sea of consciousness, please don't scare the dog. Hearing this, Qin Zhan took a deep look at Yi Yin and his son, and turned his head away. Compared with Henry Zhang, who is outspoken, Zhou Mingho is much calmer. He knew that, to a certain extent, the Yi family was really trying their best to resist the corpse tide this time. But Cangzhou Xianqing is owned by the Yi family, can they not work hard? However, this point is destined to be unrecognizable. Because Zhou Mingho couldn't prove that if the corpse wave attacked the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture, the Yi family would not be so desperate. If you say it at this time, you will definitely be bitten by Yi Wudao. He stood up from the crowd and cupped his hands. Sect Master, seniors, what Yi Daoyu said is good, the Yi family has indeed worked hard, but hard work may not be high. According to the frontline war merit system, war merit is only related to the results of the war to a greater extent. Dai Yi, how many corpses did the Yi family exterminate in this corpse tide, and how many zombies in Zifu? This? Yi Wudao was suddenly led by Zhou Mingho and he was speechless. It seems that fellow Daoist Yi doesn't know, but it doesn't matter. As the commander of the Cangzhou coalition, I have a military merit book here, which records the number of zombies killed by all Cangzhou cultivators. Said, Zhou Mingho glanced at Yi Wudao with contempt, and took out a jade slip from the storage bag. This jade slip is exactly what he called the military merit book. Sect Master, seniors, please see. Zhou Mingho presented the detailed military record in the jade slip in public. Next second, a light curtain appeared in front of everyone, and on the light curtain Chen Daoxuan's name was impressively ranked first. Immediately after his name is the number of zombies he killed in this corpse tide. Chapter 212, Cloud Palace. Everyone looked at the military record on the light screen with different expressions. When Yi Wudao saw Chen Daoxian, who was ranked first, and the number of corpses he had killed, his face suddenly became happy. He bowed his hands to the many elders of Qinyuan Jianzong. Sect Master, Seniors, I suspect that this military record presented by Dao Yuzhou is a forgery. Fake military exploits. This? Yi Wudao's remarks made the true monarch Yuan Ying in Asgard whisper. Zhou Mingho heard Yi Wudao's questioning, but his expression did not change in the slightest, and he cupped his hands. Reporting to the sect master, there are 2 records of military merit in this Zhangzhou Xianqing battle. One is recorded by my Zhangzhou coalition forces. The other copy was recorded by Dao Yu Zhang of the Qinyun Palace. Dao Yu Yi suspected that the military exploits recorded by the Zhangzhou allied forces were false. Hearing the 3 words of Qinyun Temple, Yi Wudao showed a smile on the corner of his mouth and said, the military exploits recorded by Qinyun Temple, I am going down the Wangxinghai Sea, naturally no one will not believe it. That's good. A smile appeared on the corner of Zhou Mingho's mouth. The sect master of Qinyuan Jianzong, who is located in the first block, ordered, in that case Hall Master Zheng, invite the monks who are responsible for the record of this battle in Qinyun Hall to come in. Yes, sect master. 2 seats away from the Hall Master of Zhenhai Hall, the Hall Master of Qinyuan Hall, who was wearing a black robe and couldn't see his face clearly, nodded. The red-haired Zhang Yu walked into the fairy palace. Zhang Yu bowed respectfully towards the sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect and the palace master of Qinyun Palace, and said, Subordinate Zhang Yu, see the sect master and the palace master. Exemption. The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect waved his hand. Zhang Yu, let me ask you, is the military merit recorded in the military merit book in front of you true? Hearing this, Zhang Yu looked at the light curtain in front of Zhou Mingho, nodded and said, Report to sect master, it's true. Okay, you go down. Yes, my subordinates retire. Zhang Yu quickly quit Asgard. Yi Wudao, what else do you have to say? The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect looked at Yi Wudao. Yi Wudao only felt a suffocating pressure on his shoulders, as if it could crush him in the next second. The mark on Yi Wudao's eyebrows beat wildly, helping him relieve the pressure, but to no avail. The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect only relies on her own strength. Although she is not the number 1 of Qinyuan Sword Sect, as the master of a sect taught by true immortals, she has the treasure of pure Yang Xianqi, which suppresses the luck of the sect. If you count this treasure, the real strength of the Qinyuan Sword Sect master is definitely the strongest one in the Qinyuan Sword Sect. It's just that the use of the pure Yang immortal artifact is too involved. Unless you gather more than 90% of the mana of the Yuanying true monarch of the Qinyuan Sword Sect, it is impossible to use it with the cultivation of the Qinyuan Sword Sect master. But even so, with the cultivation base of the Qinyuan Sword Sect master, it is not too easy to suppress a Jindan cultivator like Yi Wudao with aura. Boom. Yi Wudao was directly pressed to the ground by the momentum of the Qinyuan Sword Sect master, but he raised his head recklessly and looked at the Qinyuan Sword Sect master. I have been in Zhangzhou for so long, and I have never heard of one Jindan monk named Chen Daoxian. I wonder if this fellow Taoist can stand up and let me see you next time. Hear this. The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect took back his momentum. In the crowd, Chen Daoxian, who had not spoken for a while, was quite helpless. He knew that he was unexpectedly involved in the vortex of the battle between the 2 factions of Qinyuan Sword Sect. Chen Daoxian was very puzzled about this kind of struggle. It stands to reason that the sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect has an absolute advantage in both strength and righteousness. Moreover, during the more than 400 years she has been the sect master, the power of Qinyuan Sword Sect has been growing. There is no reason why so many elders of the Qinyuan Sword Sect did not follow the sect master, but instead followed a 3rd elder whose strength and reputation were not as good as the sect master of the Qinyuan Sword Sect. In addition to the elder faction and the suzerain faction, Qinyuan Jianzong also has a considerable number of neutral factions. This is obviously very unreasonable. Could it be that the sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect did something that was outrageous and resentful? So that so many elders of Qinyuan Jianzong dislike her? As for gender reasons, it doesn't exist here at all for the monks. The first factor that determines the status of a monk is strength. And gender has nothing to do with the strength of the monk. There should not be too many powerful female monks. Therefore, in the world of immortality, there are many sect masters and even the patriarch of the immortal family, all of which are held by female monks. Although he was helpless, he was named by Yi Wudao, and Qin Daoxian had to stand up from the crowd. He bowed to the sect master of Qinyuan sword sect and many elders. Qin Daoxian, see the sect master and the elders. Ha 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 ha. Seeing Qin Daoxian, Yi Wudao laughed wildly. A foundation-building cultivator, elders, a mere foundation-building cultivator, beheading nearly 100 million corpses. Even if he is a sword cultivator who has mastered the sword intent of Silk Rain, it is absolutely impossible. This kind of slippery world is ridiculous. He bowed his hands to the hall master of Qinyun Palace. Master Jing, I have to wonder if your subordinates were deceived or bribed by Zhou Mingho and the others. Hear this. The temple master of the Qinyun temple frowned slightly, and said with some displeasure, Yi Wudao, what are you trying to say? I want this fellow Daoist Qin to make an oath of the great Dao in public. The corpse he killed this time was killed by his own strength, without any other external force. Saying that, Yi Wudao looked at Qin Daoxian with a forcing gaze. Junior, do you dare? Hearing this, Qin Daoxian remained silent. I see. Qin Daoxian instantly understood the other party's plan. It turned out that the other party had long guessed that he must have used some external force to have such a sturdy record. This remark is to confuse the external force of his creation of White Lotus with the external force of the suzerain faction, and then let him take the oath of the Great Road, in order to attack the prestige of the suzerain faction. As for Qin Daoxian himself, in the eyes of the forces behind Yi Wudao, he is simply a dispensable little character, and no one will care about his life and death. So vicious. Qin Daoxian's fingers tightened slightly. He now has two choices. One is to expose the natal magic weapon of creating the White Lotus, and the other is to remain silent. But sometimes silence is often an admission. The elder faction behind Yi Wudao only needs him to be silent. This time, testing Cangzhou cultivators and letting Cangzhou cultivators exterminate the tide of corpses was the common decision of all senior officials of Qinyuan sword sect. Qin Daoxian was silent, representing that the people of the suzerain faction practiced favoritism in this test and deliberately suppressed the people of the elder faction. This will undoubtedly push many elders who originally chose to be neutral to the third elder. They also had to wonder whether Yi Wudao escaped because he was afraid of death, or whether people from the suzerain faction wanted to assassinate him. After all, taking Yi Wudao and Cangzhou Xianqing as bait, it was proposed by the master of Jinhai Palace, and the master of Jinhai Palace was surrounded by the hardcore sect master of Qinyuan sword sect. It's hard to doubt whether the Jinhai Palace hall master wants to take this opportunity to get rid of Yi Wudao. Even everyone will think of the loss of Zhenangwen back then. Is it as simple as everyone sees? Is it caused by Yi Wudao's escape, or is there another reason? Some things are often not thought deeply, otherwise a conspiracy will be revealed everywhere. Confused, Qin Daoxian immediately understood that Yi Wudao's competition for credit was false, and that the elder faction behind him wanted to confuse the public and suppress the suzerain faction. Think of this. Qin Daoxian knew that it was time for him to make a choice. Although he didn't want to get involved in this factional fight, he couldn't help himself at the moment. At present, his cultivation base is only to build a foundation. Although his strength is comparable to that of the Zifu cultivator, none of the high-level Qinyuan sword sect present is not the cultivation base of nascent soul stage or above. With his meager strength, he couldn't get into the eyes of everyone at all. Another chess piece. Qin Daoxian hated this feeling, but he knew better what it meant to be a Junjie who knew the current affairs. Taking a deep breath, Qin Daoxian bowed his hands to everyone in the court and said solemnly, reporting to the sect master and elders, I really used external forces in this battle to destroy the corpse tied in Cangzhou Xianqing. Hear this. There was a smile on the corner of Yi Wudao's mouth, and even with Yi Yin behind him, his eyes moved slightly. However, the external force I use is not the power of outsiders, but it. With that said, a stream of light flew out from Qin Daoxian's dantian, turned into a white lotus flower, floated in the air and slowly rotated. From the aura on this white lotus, everyone can roughly tell that this is a third-order magic weapon. Although the grade of the third-order magic weapon is not low in the eyes of everyone, it is not worth mentioning. The instruments used in their hands, the lowest rank are all instruments above the 5th rank. Where can I see a third-rank instrument? Qin Daoxian continued to explain. This instrument, called the White Lotus of Fortune, is a self-created instrument. Its function is very simple, and it can store the true essence of the foundation-building cultivator. This White Lotus of Good Fortune in my hand can store up to 10 times the true essence of a cultivator. It is with this thing that I have enough true essence to kill so many corpses. The magic weapon that stores the true essence? Isn't this very similar to the magic weapon that stored mana that Hall Master Huyen was thinking about? Interesting. It's just that the rank is too low to let me use it, and I don't know if it is troublesome to refine. Chen Daoxuan's remarks immediately attracted the attention of many elders. A magic weapon that can store true essence is indeed enough to arouse everyone's interest. Of course, just a little bit of interest. After all, according to Chen Daoxuan's introduction, this magical instrument called the White Lotus of Fortune can only be used by the Foundation Establishment cultivator at most. Whether or not the cultivator of Zifu can store mana is unknown. Even if the Zifu cultivator could store the mana, it would only be useless to the nascent soul cultivator. Because the mana of the Yuanian cultivator is not only of a completely different quality from the Zifu cultivator, but its quantity is so huge that the Zifu cultivator is desperate. The two are not on the same level at all. This function of storing mana is not even a drop in the bucket. Of course, for low-level monks, this magic weapon is definitely an artifact. Hearing Chen Daoxuan's introduction, Yi Wudeo's face darkened immediately. He hurriedly bowed his hands to everyone and said anxiously, "Elders, not to mention the authenticity of this instrument, he said that it was created by him. Is it really created by him? What if someone gave him a treasure?" Putting down the corpse tied in Cangzhou is a test that you all decided to give Cangzhou cultivators, and no one is allowed to cheat for personal gain. Otherwise, what is the dignity of my Qianyuan sword sect? Done. Yi Wudao looked at Chen Daoxian. Junior, you said that this magic weapon was created by you. Can you show the evidence? I don't know what the evidence Yi Daoyu said is referring to. Hear this. The corner of Yi Wudeo's mouth showed a successful smile. You just said that this third-order magic weapon was created by you. I wonder if you can create a magic weapon on the spot? Creating magic tools is not refining magic tools. The difference in difficulty is simply the difference between heaven and earth. Even the most talented artifact refiner of Qianyuan Jianzong would not dare to say such things as creating artifact on the spot. Inside the hall, a monk wearing a fiery red robe frowned and scolded, Yi Wudao, are you despising this seat? Hear this. Yi Wudeo's face turned pale. He immediately knelt to the ground again and kowtowed, Palace Master Huyen Wudao dare not. It's just that this junior said madly, saying that he can create a third-order magic weapon by himself. Wudao is really dissatisfied. I think that the monks in the Qianyuan Jianzong refining hall have been thinking hard day and night, and they may not be able to create a few magic tools in their whole life, but this kid, at a weak age, is ashamed to say that these magic tools were created by him. How arrogant. Hearing this explanation, the cultivator named Hall Master Huyen nodded slightly. As the most prestigious master of the refining palace among the neutral factions, he has always hated factional disputes within the sect. Sometimes he also felt very disgusted with the actions of the sect master. If the sect master didn't like to do things so much, where would the factional disputes of Qianyuan Jianzong come from? As the appointed heir of the previous suzerain of Qianyuan Jianzong, coupled with the hardcore support of the Zhenhai Palace Hall Master, who would think against her? But the master of the refining hall shook his head and looked at Qin Daoxian. Your name is Qin Daoxian? Senior, yes. Qin Daoxian lowered his head, and he was another powerful cultivator who could not see the depth at all. You said just now that this magic weapon was created by you? Hall Master Huyen stretched out his hand, and the third-grade fortune-telling white lotus in front of Qin Daoxian flew into his hand. Qin Daoxuan's heart froze when he felt that the connection between himself and the natal magic weapon was suddenly interrupted. Returning to the seniors, it was created by the juniors. Qin Daoxian lowered his head and said respectfully. The master of the refining hall observed the creation of the white lotus, and his face gradually became serious. Half an hour. He returned the white lotus of good fortune and said with a smile, Interesting, since you said that this instrument was created by you, then this seat will test you, how about it? Although he said this to Qin Daoxian, his eyes turned to the third elder Yin. Seeing the gaze of Hall Master Huyen, the three elders did not dare to neglect him, and bowed their hands solemnly saying, Since Hall Master Huyen is willing to try this junior, we should recognize it. The Hall Master Huyen immediately looked at the sect master of the Qianyuan sword sect. An ethereal and gentle voice came out, Palace Master Huyin, please just do it. Thank you, Sect Master. The Master of Huyin Hall bowed to the Sect Master of Qinyuan Jianzong. Finally, he looked at Qin Daoxian and said, "The art of refining is broad and profound, Junior. Do you dare to take my test?" Heard. Qin Daoxian felt the 30 stardust in the sea of knowledge, took a step forward and cupped his hands. "Junior, dare to try." Hall Master Huyin nodded. "Okay." Chapter 213. The Master of the Refining Hall gave Qin Daoxian a deep look, and then waved his sleeves. Inside the hall, a light curtain appeared again, but the content recorded on this light curtain was an unformed second-order magic weapon inheritance. This is an instrument that a disciple of my refining hall failed to create. The function of this instrument is to simulate the Tao domain of high-level monks, and it is a domain-type auxiliary instrument. The material refining and shaping of this magic weapon, including part of the pattern, have been completed. What is missing now is to make up for the remaining pattern and the final fusion pattern. Hall Master Huyin slowly introduced. If you can make up the last 3 array patterns on the spot and successfully merge them into the array, then Yi Wudao has framed the meritorious person, and my Qinyuan sword sect will punish him. If you can't complete it, the juniors do their best. Qin Daoxian nodded. Give you 3 hours to prepare. Heard. Qin Daoxian shook his head. A stick of incense is enough. This time, Hall Master Huyin was surprised, even though he only completed the 3 array patterns. But you must know that this is the creation of 3 real patterns on the spot. In addition to requiring the refiner's refining skills, it also requires the refiner to have extraordinary creativity. In the view of the Master of the Refining Hall, a refiner who only inherits refiners according to the predecessors and never knows how to create magic weapons, his achievements in refining are limited after all. Only those with astonishing qualifications and very creative craftsmen can become true masters of craftsmanship and be admired by future generations. Pity. There are very few such creative refiners in the huge Qinyuan sword sect. Hall Master Huyin himself is one of them. Okay. Hall Master Huyin nodded. Since Qin Daoxian himself asked for a stick of incense, he naturally wouldn't stop him. Since the other party dares to do this, either he has real skills or he is a pure fool. Hall Master Huyin believes that none of the monks who can stand here are fools. The reason why Qin Daoxian wanted a stick of incense. Naturally, there is only one stick of incense in the epiphany time. With his talent for refining, if he can't handle these 3 formations even in the state of epiphany, then giving him a few more hours won't help at all. Simply he asked for a stick of incense time. A mere second-order magic tool, for him, a third-order high-grade artifact refiner, is already a gadget that can be easily refined. But this second-order magic weapon does not have a complete inheritance, but requires him to complete it. This is 100 times more difficult compared to the second-order weapon refining inheritance. The difference is like, one is copying, the other is creating by one's own ability. With Qin Daoxian's divine sense comparable to that of a cultivator of the Zifu, he quickly remembered the semi-finished second-order magic weapon pattern on the light curtain. Next moment, he closed his eyes in public. In the depths of the sea of knowledge, 30 stardust suddenly merged into one. An inexplicable Dao Yin circulated around him. Epiphany. Hall Master Huyin suddenly stood up from his seat. Inside the hall, the other nascent soul cultivators were also startled by the scene in front of them. Entering a state of epiphany and meditation, you can see the horror of the cultivator's talent for refining tools. Hall Master Huyin looked at Qin Daoxian, his hands trembled slightly, and his breathing gradually increased. The other Zhangzhou cultivators who came with Qin Daoxian saw this scene, and their faces showed surprise expressions. Unexpectedly, Brother Qin is not only amazing in kendo talent, but also even more amazing in crafting talent. No wonder the Qin family has become a crafting family in a few years. Zhou Mubai looked at the scene in front of him and said to himself. Yi Wudao watched Qin Daoxian suddenly enter a state of epiphany, his face gloomy. But he was helpless at the moment. As for interrupting the opponent's epiphany, Yi Wudao didn't have the courage. If he really interrupted Qin Daoxian's epiphany, the master of the refining hall would definitely slap him to death. His father Yi Yin might not be able to keep him. Behind Yi Wudao, the third elder Yi Yin was still indifferent, as if Qin Daoxian's epiphany had nothing to do with him. Soon the time for a stick of incense passed. The Dao Yun around Qin Daoxian gradually disappeared. He slowly opened his eyes and nodded to the master of the refining hall. Senior, you can start. Hall Master Huyen nodded. I saw that he took out a few pieces of spiritual ore from nowhere and suspended in front of him. Afterwards, a purple baby fire emerged, wrapping a few second-order spiritual ore, and within a few breaths, the spiritual ore was refined into groups of spiritual liquid. Immediately afterwards, several groups of spiritual liquid merged into one. Refining, shaping, the whole process is in the hands of the master of the refining hall, as easy as breathing, and the speed is extremely fast. The process that an ordinary second-order alchemist takes several days to complete can be easily completed in his hands with just a few breaths. Then, Hall Master Huyen waved his hand, and the bronze mirror-shaped embryo automatically flew to Qin Daoxian. Thank you, Senior. Qin Daoxian bowed his hands. He didn't dare to neglect and immediately engraved a pattern on the embryo. This magic weapon originally had 7 patterns. According to the second-order magic weapon standard, Qin Daoxian must make up at least 3 array patterns before he can be promoted to the second-order low-grade magic weapon and complete the test of the master of the refining hall. People in the palace. Although he is not as proficient in refining as the master of the refining hall, but as a cultivator of nascent soul, he has lived for so many years, and he knows some common sense of refining. However, Qin Daoxian's every move, but no one can pick it out. I saw Qin Daoxian take a deep breath. The bronze mirror-shaped embryo stopped directly in front of him, and then, a mysterious and inexplicable array pattern was slowly outlined on the embryo. Everyone saw it. This array pattern is exactly one of the 7 magic weapon array patterns in the exam question given by Hall Master Huyen. Qin Daoxian really learned the 7 patterns in just 1 stick of incense. Of course. For a Tier 3 item refiner, it is not a problem to memorize the 7 patterns in a stick of incense and engrave them on the ware embryo. Because the inscription pattern becomes more and more difficult, and the difficulty increases geometrically. Especially the engraving of the 9th array pattern and the engraving of the 10th pattern, the difficulty has suddenly increased several times. Because the 9th layer pattern magic tool and the 10-folded array pattern magic tool are the difference between the first-order magic tool and the second-order magic tool. For a Tier 3 artifact refiner, what kind of difficulty can it be to figure out how to refine a Tier 1 magic weapon in a stick of incense? Under everyone's attention, one after another array pattern was inscribed by Qin Daoxian. After 2 incense sticks, the 7-layered pattern is interlocked and tightly combined on the bronze mirror-shaped embryo. Everyone knows that next is the main event. Qin Daoxian's eyes narrowed slightly. The 8th pattern. With the consumption of Qin Daoxian's true essence, the mysterious and complicated array pattern slowly appeared on the bronze mirror embryo, and it was seamlessly combined with the 7th array pattern. With the final line of the 8th array pattern completed, the Zhangzhou cultivator's heart was hanging tightly, and he let go of half of it. Done. Qin Daoxian actually did it, he really made up the 8th pattern. In just 1 stick of incense, the 8th array pattern was completed. Even among the disciples of the Qianyuan Sword Sect's refining hall, this achievement was one of the few. Yi Wudao's words are undoubtedly a slander of Qin Daoxian, a man of merit. The nascent soul cultivator of the neutral faction in the hall looked at Yi Wudao, especially the eyes of the faction of the Third Elder. Something was not right. Slandering people with meritorious deeds is an objectionable thing everywhere. If Qin Daoxian's military exploits really came from favoritism, everyone would think that Yi Wudao was justified. If Qin Daoxian got his military merit by fighting for himself, but was slandered by Yi Wudao, the Yuanning cultivators in the hall, especially some of the Yuanning cultivators who came from loose cultivators. It is estimated that he has the heart to kill Yi Wudao. When Yi Wudao saw Qin Daoxian make up the 8th pattern, his face turned pale. He knew he was done. The hall master of Jinhai Palace leaned on his body and looked at him with interest. Originally he planned to help, but Qin Daoxian did not expect Qin Daoxian to be so ambitious, and by himself he directly resolved the offensive of the 3 Elders faction. Now, Qin Daoxian had no idea what the outside world thought. He has been completely immersed in the joy of refining. That's right, the refining tool is quite a happy thing for him. Even without the ability to store comprehension in the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, Qin Daoxian's talent for refining tools is very high. At least higher than his kendo talent. Otherwise, he would not have mastered the vast majority of the second-order weapon refining methods by self-study without no one to teach him. Only later, in the process of Qin Daoxian's refining, this kind of happiness was lost, and there was more utility. But he couldn't. Compared with the joy of discovering the new world when he first came into contact with the refining tool, Qin Daoxian later regarded the refining tool as a business and a means of making a living for his family. Especially in the industrialized production of Feijin day after day, how can there be any happiness at all? But now, it took a stick of incense to fill up the pattern of this second-order magic weapon, allowing Qin Daoxian to re-experience this kind of happiness. Just like when he first refined the Rongling furnace after he created the Rongling formation. Excited, satisfied, the whole person is full of a sense of accomplishment. Qin Daoxian now feels this way. Moreover, his current artifact refining and epiphany ability are many times higher than those of the past. Creating array patterns is also much easier for him than before. The 9th array pattern was slowly engraved. Immediately after, the 10th. When Qin Daoxian inscribed the 10th pattern, Yi Wudao felt his whole body softened, but after looking back at his father, his body straightened slightly. He believed that with his father Yi Yin, he would never die no matter what. He is not a loose cultivator without foundation. He is the only son of the head of the Qinyuan Jinzong elder faction. Thinking of this, Yi Wudao regained his confidence. Even if he slandered a foundation-building sword cultivator, so what? Besides, what he did today was acquiesced by his father Yi Yin. This is Yi Wudao's greatest strength. 3 array patterns make up. In the crowd, Henry Zhang was slightly excited. When Zhou Mubai heard this, a smile appeared on his handsome face. Unconsciously, Qin Daoxian's actions made all the Zhangzhou monks present feel honored. This is what Qin Daoxian himself did not expect. However, Qin Daoxian's movement of engraving the formation pattern did not stop. Seeing this scene, Hall Master Huyen walked slowly in the air, walking towards His Highness Qin Daoxian. Step by step, he walked to a 10-foot position in front of Qin Daoxian and stood still, looked at him blankly and stood up to protect the Dharma for him. He looked at Qin Daoxian as if the jade craftsman saw a piece of peerless jade, and Bull saw 1,000 miles of horses. The admiration and praise in his eyes were completely unstoppable. This kind of expectant look, if the master of the refining palace is willing to break the routine for him and accept Qin Daoxian as a closed disciple, no one will believe it. Only, Qin Daoxian did not see this kind of look. At this moment, in his eyes, there was nothing else in this world except this bronze mirror-shaped embryo. Absolute focus makes his performance more and more stable. The 11th pattern, the 12th pattern, the 13th pattern. Now, no one in the hall was paying attention to Yi Wudao, and everyone's eyes were attracted by this rare artifact refining genius. Although everyone is not a professional artifact refiner, but they know the common sense of artifact refining. They know that it takes an amazing artifact refining talent to be able to make up the semi-finished artifact of the 7-layered array pattern to the current level within a stick of incense. This kind of refining talent, even Huyanqi, the master of the refining hall, who is known as the most talented refining tool in the history of Qinyuan Jinzong, is far inferior to Qin Daoxian. The 17th pattern. Qin Daoxian's forehead sweated slightly, which was caused by the high consumption of spiritual consciousness. After all, Qin Daoxian's refining this time is not based on the gourd and the scoop, but also needs to constantly calculate and verify the rationality of the array pattern in the process of fusing the pattern. This undoubtedly greatly consumed his consciousness. Fortunately, Qin Daoxian's consciousness far surpassed that of ordinary base-building cultivators, and could be comparable to that of Zifu cultivators, otherwise he would not be able to support this consumption at all. The pattern that was realized in the epiphany just now, with the deepening of the refining process, the greater the gap with the actual situation. This also means that Qin Daoxian needs to make changes to the pattern according to the actual situation. In other words, what he relies on is no longer the plug-in Hongmeng Enlightenment Dao Jing, but relying on his practical talent for refining tools and accumulation on the way of refining tools. The entire hall. With the inscription of one after another array pattern, it became audible for the needle to fall. As the last stripe of the 18th formation pattern was engraved, the 18th formation pattern lighted up on the bronze mirror-shaped instrument. Finally, the 18-layered array pattern slowly merged into the vessel embryo, and no trace was ever seen again. Fusion. Done. Qin Daoxian raised his head slightly tired, but saw Huyanqi's excited eyes. Good. Well done. Hall Master Huyen kept nodding his head. He stretched out his hand, took the second-order high-grade magic weapon created by Qin Daoxian, and rubbed it carefully. He drew out a trace of mana and slowly poured it into the bronze mirror magic tool. Although the bronze mirror instrument made an overwhelmed hum, it did not shatter on the spot. It can be seen that the quality of this instrument is excellent. You must know that he is the true monarch of Yuanying, and he is a great cultivator in the late Yuanying period. With the injection of this mana, the field of wind and thunder inspired by the bronze mirror magical instrument instantly covered the entire hall. The field of wind and thunder attributes? Exactly. Qin Daoxian nodded. After carefully feeling the field of wind and thunder, Huyanqi withdrew his mana and said to everyone, I think Daoxuan's talent for refining tools, you must have seen it, right? Creating a third-order magic weapon is extremely easy for Daoxian. As he said that, he looked at the sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect. Sect master Yi Wudao slandered the meritorious people so much. Chapter 214. Hear this. The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect has not spoken yet. A young true monarch Yuanying stood up angrily and said loudly, Sect master Yi Wudao has repeatedly violated the decree of my Qinyuan Sword Sect, and we must not abandon the public for personal reasons. Otherwise everyone will follow suit. How can I save the law of Qinyuan Jianzong? Yes, sect master, in the battle of Zenangwan, you have already spared the third elder's life for the sake of his hard work, and you must not be merciful. What Elder Wu said is very true. Presumably what Elder Yi did to his son was also grief and anger in his heart, right? A young Taoist from the suzerain faction looked at Yi Yin and said slowly, with Huyanqi's voice. More and more neutral elders and hall masters began to speak, demanding that the sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect severely punish Yi Wudao. It's hard to resist. Qin Daoxian suddenly flashed this sentence. In the main hall, the sect master of the Qinyuan Sword Sect in the first seat looked at the third elder Yi Yin and said, The third elder, what do you think should be done to punish the incompetent? Hear this. Yi Yin didn't lift his eyes but said indifferently, It's all up to the sect master's orders. Good. The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect nodded, and immediately looked at the hall master of Jinhai Palace. Junior brother, this time, you have been responsible for the extermination of the Zhangzhou corpse tide and the beheading of Shinju Jinren. Now that something like this happens, you should say how to punish? Seeing that senior sister kicked the ball to him, the hall master of Jinhai Temple suddenly came to his senses. He pretended to be thoughtful. In private, he conveyed a voice to Yi Wudao's sea of knowledge in a wicked way. I said that your death is approaching and you still don't believe it. Hear this. Yi Wudao was so frightened that his face turned pale. He immediately wanted to hide behind Yi Yin in horror and kept saying, Dad, save me, Daddy, save. But soon he found himself speechless. It turned out that his mouth had been sealed by Yi Yin. But he was in a panic, and his ugly expression was still seen by many nascent soul true monarchs in the hall, which made people laugh in their hearts. Thinking that Yi Yin, a person with a strong reputation in Wangxinghai and even Xianyun's who actually gave birth to such a thing, everyone felt a little sympathy for the third elder. Seeing Yi Wudao's appearance, a light flashed in the eyes of the hall master of Jinhai Palace, who had planned to kill him. The enemy's pig teammates are simply friendly forces, so why kill them? Think of this. The master of Jinhai Palace stood up and said coldly, Yi Wudao, kneel down. The words fall. Yi Wudao's body flew out of Yi Yin's side uncontrollably and knelt under the hall. Seeing that he was so scared that he was trembling all over, it was difficult to regard him and the unruly Yi Wudao just now as one person. Shaking his head slightly, the head of Jinhai Palace said, When Zenangwan fell, you as the general should have been killed. But Sect Master Nian has made countless meritorious deeds for the sect over the past 2,000 years, spare your death, and change the punishment to banning you from Zhangzhou Xianqing for 100 years. Now, before 100 years have passed, you violated the sect ban and fled Zhangzhou Xianqing, which is the first sin. Yi Wudao raised his head, panicked and defended, I'm here to shut up. The master of Jinhai Palace looked at him coldly, From now on, if you dare to say a word in your mouth, this seat will kill you on the spot. Hearing this murderous scolding, Yi Wudao trembled and did not dare to say a word. Over the years, the hall master of Jinhai Hall has almost single-handedly suppressed the countless alien races in Wanxinghai who dare not bark their teeth, relying not on kindness and modesty, but on the accumulation of corpse mountain slaughter. Since he said that he had killed himself in public, he would definitely kill himself. Yi Wudao was very clear in his heart. At this point, he can only pray that the people of the suzerain faction are still afraid of his father and these people, and will not completely tear their faces. Seeing that Yi Wudao was silent like a cicada, the head of the Jinhai Palace continued, The corpse tide broke out in Zhangzhou. As the only Jindan cultivator in Zhangzhou, you didn't want to resist the corpse tide, but instead fled to the sect. This is a second crime. Yi Wudao trembled again. Today, when the sect is discussing merit and deeds, you are narrow-minded, jealous of meritorious people, and you have repeatedly slandered and slandered. These are 3 sins. The hall master of Jinhai Palace was full of murderous aura. 3 sins are punished together. Yi Wudao, do you think you deserve to die? Me. Yi Wudao was agitated by the murderous aura of the hall master of Jinhai Palace, and was so frightened that he had no masters, and the mark between his eyebrows was beating wildly. Father, father. Yi Wudao looked at Yi Yin, who was sitting high on the throne, and cried in tears, save me, Dad. But Yi Yin's eyes narrowed as if he couldn't hear his son's cry for help. Yi Wudao looked at the sect master of Qianyuan Sword Sect again, kowtowed and begged for mercy. Sect master, my father has made countless exploits for the sect. I am his only son. You can't kill me, you can't kill me. Humph. The master of Jinhai Palace snorted coldly. Yi Wudao, beg for mercy now, don't you think it's too late? Several crimes are punished together, this seat betrays you. Master, wait a minute. Before the punishment was given by the Lord of Jinhai Palace, the voice of the sect master of Qianyuan Sword Sect rang out. Since my sect retreated to Wangxinghai, the 3rd elders have made countless merits for our sect, so hard work and merit, and Wudao is his only son. Forgive him one more time. Sect master is impossible. Yeah, sect master, no matter how high the 3 elders are, they can't keep violating the decree of my Qianyuan Sword Sect. If the decree doesn't exist, why does the sect exist? Sect master, in the battle of Zenangwan, you have forgiven Yi Wudao once, but you can't do it again. Yes, sect master, you have kindness in your heart, but some people will not appreciate your kindness. Inside the hall there was a lot of opposition. Even the elders and hall masters of this neutral faction felt that the sect master had indeed done his utmost to the 3 elders. The suzerain has repeatedly backed down, but the 3 elders and the lineage have to make an inch. One can't help but wonder whether it is Yi Yin or her concubine Qin Shui who is sitting on the throne of the Qianyuan Sword Sect. The sect master of Qianyuan Sword Sect stood up and said in a gentle voice, since you feel that the 3 elders have not enough credit, then in my name how about interceding for Yi Wudao again? Sect master this. Oh, sect master, you are too kind. Alas, why did the sect master come to this point? In the hall there was a sigh. They all praised the kindness of the sect master, and even the people of the 3rd elder's lineage couldn't help but be touched. With such a mind, can they really be compared? If one of the other's juniors dared to jump in front of them like this, with their temper, they would have already smashed the other's bones to ashes. Senior brother Yi, if Feichen Shuerhua didn't act like that, he is really a good suzerain of my Qianyuan Sword Sect. It's a pity? Yes. In Yi Yin's sea of knowledge, a series of voices sounded, and his eyes, which had never changed, finally changed slightly. What a concubine Qin Shui, what a sect master of Qianyuan Sword Sect. Yi Yin couldn't help laughing, but soon he regained his calm expression and muttered, unfortunately. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.